All right. I think I'm live, everyone. Hello, hello. Welcome on this Friday. It's Friday, guys. We made it. Except for, I know a lot of you out there don't actually get to experience Friday. Friday is like an exciting day because a lot of us work weekends. Or you're working tonight or whatever. So the concept of Friday in these capitalist times doesn't work out so well, but still, we can be happy. TGIF. And I am very happy today because we are going to have some great, great guests on. I will introduce them to you in just a moment. But for now, we'll wait for some folks to trickle in. As you guys know, YouTube doesn't like us, but they do like viewers. They do like to push the things that are getting activity. So if you can, please smash the like button, share this stream, chat in the chat. Activity equals good to the algorithm. If you are watching us on other platforms, then do whatever you do there. Share, spread the word, because these social platforms are not going to do it for us. I hope you've all had a wonderful, wonderful week. Yes, Patrick, the weekend is a capitalist construct. Absolutely. Let's do that experiment with which country is doing that, or which place, talking about the 4-week work days. Let's do that. That's not in the cards for us here at Status Coup, though. Jordan, as I told you guys yesterday, is taking a couple of days off. It hasn't worked out so great. He's actually not being able to relax at all. It's hard for him to relax and unwind anyway, but he actually spent a lot of time with the doctor today. And if you will recall, he got COVID back in March of 2020, and he ended up with asthma. So he's getting chest x-rays and he's coughing a lot, and it's not good. It's not good. So we're worried about Jordan, and I hope you're all staying safe from COVID. My long hauler has really been acting up lately, but feeling good today, feeling positive today. Keep smashing the like button. Cassandra, meditation. I think he does need meditation, but I think Jordan meditating is kind of a hilarious concept. I don't think it would go well for him. He'd get very confused about what you're supposed to do and think about, even though you're not really supposed to. You're supposed to dismiss your thoughts. I'm also not good at meditation. All this intro is really to just waste some time, because that's how it works on YouTube. As people hopefully start to get the notifications, people come in from our text alerts, which you can sign up for. You can't rely on these social sites to give you updates. Go to statuscoup.com/text, and you can sign up for text alerts every time we go live. And whenever we have really important breaking news, you'll get a text message. So please sign up there. And also, if you go to statuscoup.pub/email, you can sign up for our email list, and you'll also get email notifications and email alerts to keep you all up to date. Tony says, are you burying the lead? I don't know. Am I? I mentioned at the top that we have a very exciting show, but I guess I did not tell you what it is yet. But you super sleuths out there will have gathered from the headline what we're going to talk about. We are already getting some super chats. Thank you. VA from NY. Just remember, state single-payer initiatives are a neoliberal policy to divide the Medicare for All movement. Just because it's healthcare, it's not for all. So we're going to talk about that. There are obviously different points of view. I'll tell you right up front, I don't agree with you, but that's okay. We can disagree. We can disagree, and we're gonna talk about a lot of this stuff as we go. So keep smashing the like button, keep sharing the stream. We've been live for about almost 5 minutes, and more folks are trickling in. Definitely share that stream. Deborah says, no YouTube notification. Yep. So text message is a lifesaver. Absolutely. It's very annoying. You would think, after all this time that YouTube has had to get their act together and become innovators in the space of sending notifications about videos that people have said that they want, you think they could get it right. But nope, They can't. And that's on purpose. That's absolutely on purpose for sure. We're not CNN, so they don't want to give us the boost. I appreciate all of you. Patrick Molloy says in Germany, union members can have as low as a 26-hour work week. That sounds good. That sounds pretty fantastic. But even if I could work, 20 hours a week or whatever, for status quo, I don't think I could. Not because of anything that's like good about me, but it's like because we're immersed in politics and we're immersed in social media, and it's like it's all intertwined, the reporting, and especially when we're working on Flint stories, it's like we wake up at 8 or whatever and work till midnight. When we're on Flint story mode or another investigation. So, folks, today we're going to talk about Medicare for All. This is a topic that for the majority of our audience is progressive. This is near and dear to our hearts. And even if you don't consider yourself in a progressive, or you weren't a Bernie voter or whatever, the statistics, the polling shows that the majority of Americans are for Medicare for All, are for a single payer system. And that is something that the politicians in office are not paying attention to. And so when politicians in office don't pay attention to the people, what happens? Well, protests happen and activism happens, and people get up in arms. And just yesterday, with the Capitol bomb threat guy, Floyd Roseberry, not guy, the Capitol bomb threat terrorist, Floyd Ray Roseberry, he talked about his lack of healthcare, the lack of coverage for treatments that would help him to walk. And his wife has or had skin cancer, wasn't covered. So that man reached a point of desperation. And we're going to play that clip again too. And I really always want to emphasize this. I emphasized this a lot yesterday, not to say, oh, hey, this poor white man, poor guy, he's down on his luck and he got upset. And so he went to bomb the Capitol. Poor guy. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. That guy's a terrorist. If he had been black, he wouldn't have been sitting out there for hours with like no police doing anything. The outcome would not have been the same. One of the first things at the press conference with the police officer said he had recently lost his mother. Yeah, if the guy had been black, that's not what the first thing the police officer said to the press would have been. So I want to be very clear about what I am highlighting and why. And it has nothing to do with him. It has everything to do in this case, in this discussion, in this context, with the desperation of the American people, because they're being bankrupted by healthcare bills or they're giving up. They're committing suicide in some cases. They're not getting the treatment that they need in a lot of cases. So we're going to talk about all of that. And as you guys will recall, there was just a series of marches for Medicare for all across the country. And this, I think, was impressive because there were 56 cities, I believe was the count, 56 cities where there were marches taking place. I've said, I always have to be honest. And in some cases I was not annoyed. Annoyed isn't the right word, but I was frustrated by some people who were not focused. It seemed like not focused on the right things, or were more focused on like fighting or whatever, and on and on and on. But what I experienced at the Washington, because I covered the Washington, D.C. march, And what I experienced there was great. The speakers were great. Marianne Williamson was the keynote, and she is fantastic. And the people, the attendees, I wasn't able to attend the march portion because of my long hauler. I can't march in the heat or I would literally be passing out pretty quickly. But the portion that I saw, the speeches in the second half of the day, were so touching. And the people I met, this is where it is. This is where it is. The people who truly want Medicare for all, for themselves, of course, but not just for themselves. These people didn't show up on I believe it was on a Saturday, on a very hot Saturday, just for themselves. They showed up for all of the American people. They showed up for everyone. They showed up for all of us. And so I really thought that the DC event was fantastic. And the fact that the organizers got this into 56 cities is astonishing and wonderful. And that is what we need. Tony, $1.99 in the super chat. Thanks, Jen, for your reporting. Stay well. Thank you. And just so you know, once I bring our guests in, I won't be reading super chats during it unless it's like something super duper relevant. Maybe we'll take questions to them at the end or something like that. But Colin will save them for me. And I'll read them later. I promise. And they do help. I told you guys yesterday, after Flint, so this was 2 weeks ago, I got sick and I had a little bit of a scare where the doctor thought, even though I've already had COVID, I'm fully vaccinated, I have long hauler, that I needed to quarantine because the risk of the Delta variant is too high right now. So I ended up having to quarantine. I was there for an extra 5 nights near Flint, right outside of Flint, which drove me crazy because if I'm going to have to be away from my kids, it's got to be for a great reason. And Flint is always a very important reason. My heart is always in Flint. To be 20 minutes away from Flint, but to be quarantined in my hotel room was just so hard for me because I really, really wanted to do more there. But even so, we did some great reporting, devastating reporting to follow up on our investigative piece. So all that is to say, if you are able to help us financially, we need it because the cost of that reporting, the cost of going across the country as we do constantly has really added up. And also we had to take out a big press release to get our Flint investigative piece out on the AP wire, which was a few $1,000s. It was kind of like a Hail Mary pass to try to get media to cover this, to try to get politicians to pay attention. We spent extra to get this out to people, to journalists specifically interested in House oversight activity. And so the House Oversight Committee is now investigating former Michigan Governor Rick Snyder and the Flint water crisis based on our reporting, but no one, not mainstream, CNN, MSNBC, nor local Detroit News, Detroit Free Press, Flint Journal, they haven't covered it. There's a conspiracy of silence, and that is not a conspiracy theory, wacky conspiracy theory. That's just true because we can't get it out there. We hand-delivered printed copies to these outlets and also to the local congressman, Dan Kildee, Representative Dan Kildee, current mayor Sheldon Neely, former mayor of Flint, Karen Weaver, did an interview with us. Jordan conducted the interview, and she was very upfront in saying, this is murder, what happened, what Governor Rick Snyder did, and the current attorney general is complicit. A Democratic attorney general, by the way, Dana Nessel. So if you can help us keep fighting. We're not going to stop trying to get this story out. A majority Black poor city is literally still being murdered, and we can't get anyone to talk about it, despite our having information no one else has. No one has been able to dispute anything we reported because it's true. So GoFundMe.com/status coup or PayPal.me/status coup would be a major, major help. Again, GoFundMe.com/status coup or PayPal.me/status coup. Absolutely any amount helps defray the cost of that few $1,000 press release to try to get this out to media. And we know they clicked on it because we can see in the back end, yikes, they still haven't reported. Help status coup do what we do in the field. Okay. Keep smashing the like button. I see YouTube's really giving us the middle finger today with viewers. But that's okay. Share, get the word out, spread the word. By the way, YouTube's admitted to us that they don't always display the real number because they need to verify whether the viewers are real, right? Cool. So today we're going to talk a lot about Medicare for All, current actions, groups, and we're going to dive into MMT a bit. We're going to talk about the petition that the March for Medicare for All organizers had, and UN, petitioning the UN. We're going to talk about it all. It's going to be really, really great. So I hope that you all are settled in, are resharing this on social media. And Colin, I want to have you pop in our guests. And a big welcome to Sharif Snuggs and Lisa Theobald. Welcome, welcome, guys. I'm so glad to have you. Wonderful. I was happy I got to meet Sharif in person at the DC March. So, Sharif, why don't you start off and talk about who you are, what you do, what your role in the March for Medicare for All is and was, and your other, whatever you want, however you want to introduce yourself.
So for those who don't know me, my name is Sharif Snuggs, and I'm new to activism and organizing. Like so many of your audience members, I stayed home, watched Status Coup, watched Jimmy Dore, watched Kyle Kalinske, watched a lot of shows on the left. So I wasn't involved. I got my news from you guys. So you guys are the rock stars in my mind. And what got me into activism, believe it or not, was when Bernie Sanders said now wasn't time for Medicare for All. That was like a big eye opener for me. That was like a big shock, to my heart. Not the fact that Bernie lost, but the fact that Bernie left the movement. And, something I always said, that leadership kills movements. Medicare for All was so intertwined with Bernie. So when he removed himself from office or removed himself from, running and said that, it killed the movement. And so there was no ground game for this. And I didn't understand that then. I understand that now, being the fact that now I'm involved in activism and organizing. So for like most people, I stayed home, social distance after when he said that. Didn't really get engaged until Forced to Vote happened. And I was thinking to myself, well, we always hear about backroom deals all the time. Maybe this is what Bernie was saying now was the time. Maybe he was saying that, not literally, but he was saying that, don't wait, guys, I got something planned for you. We're going to force the vote. And when that didn't happen, I was like, okay, we don't have electoral solutions do not work. I was like, okay, so I need to go out there and do something. And so I joined different organizations and different groups to question them. Okay, what's the next step? We're in COVID. People are dying. I live in Jackson Heights. So Jackson Heights was hit the hardest in New York City. I'm pretty sure you and Jordan knows that. So I've seen, a lot of my neighbors and members of my community really affected by this. So which got me off the couch, So again, I wasn't involved. And so I reached out to those folks, and I didn't hear any answer that I personally liked from any organization or any activist or any organizer. I was like, well, I don't like the answer you're giving, whether you're like, oh, you can't do anything now because of COVID. Oh, because this person's not doing it or that person's not doing it. I need to speak to this person. I got to speak to that person. I was like, we need direct action, like right now. So one of the first people that I started organizing with was Ricky Dunlop, who I met during the Forced to Vote Slack. He super helpful. Ricky and also Renee. Johnson from moving from. She was a member for the Members for the People's Party. I met with her. Edie Ardell, who also a member of People's Party, who lives out in San Diego. There's so many people I've reached out to across the country to help form March for Medicare for All. We all just came together. It was 5 of us at first, and then it grew to like so many different, brothers and sisters and so many people in the community to just come in and help organize. So we started with one march, and then the question was asked, like, okay, what are you going to do about people who live out west? Because right now I'm currently out west. Right now I'm in Washington State, helping out the whole Washington Red Berets. So I traveled all the way here from New York to be a part of their action on Saturday. So the question was like, so how do you get them there? And I said, oh, you're right, because no one's going to travel all the way to DC for a march. It's too expensive. So we thought, let's have a solidarity event across the country. So we have a march in Seattle, a march in LA, march in here, march over there, march over here. And so that made sense, so we have one day, we all come together as a country to push for this one issue, which is Medicare for All. And so it snowballed, it grew, I'm pretty sure you saw us online. We just constantly tagging people in the tweet, asking people to come out and show solidarity. Can you cover this? Can you be here? Can you speak? And so we really reached out. The whole Washington Red Berets was our first solidarity partner. Huge impact, not just on my activism, but also for the movement. That gave me a lot of credibility because a lot of people wanted to speak to me now because of Laura Felding and Georgia Davenport, who are like big sisters to me. They're very I mentioned to you before, like Joe Nice is also super helpful. I can always talk to him over the phone. I can always talk to Georgia, I can talk to Laura. There's so many different other activists who are so committed to this. If you reach out to them, they'll gladly talk to you. They're not closed off. And that's what helped. Savage Joy being involved too. Her coming in and just putting herself out there and just saying, hey, let's do this. So it's been an incredible ride, and we're still growing. We're still moving. You mentioned about the UN action. That's our next step. A lot of people ask why to go to the UN. Why overstep? Why don't you go to your congressperson? Why don't you go to your senator? Why would you ignore the process, so to speak? Because, we always say this word process. Because America already decided to not give a shit about us. I know a lot of people may not want me to say that, but so many of us are dying. So many Americans are dying every year. And it's clear that we need Medicare for All. It's clear that we need a single payer system of some kind. The answer is we've already asked for this already numerous of times. The studies already proved over 70% of Americans want this. So in my mind, that if that's true, right, if the numbers are real, right, we always say trust the science, trust the data, right? Why would I go ask this congressperson, or why would I go ask this senator? Why would I go ask this other person to enact this? I'm going to go over that person. I'm going to go to the UN and let them know that this is a problem. And a lot of people outside of this country don't know that most Americans can't afford their health care. And so the idea is to embarrass this country and let people know that this is a problem that we're having. We don't have any delusions that going to the UN is going to make a difference, because America always Americans. This government always sanctions so many other countries, which is illegal. You're not supposed to apply sanctions, just in case anyone doesn't know that, and they still get away with that. So the idea is a suppression campaign. So we have a march, we have a rally. Going to the UN is a suppression campaign. We want more eyeballs on this. We want more press on this. The idea is to let people know that you deserve better. Americans deserve better. Whether you know that or not, you do. And we want you, every American, despite the fact we like you or not, we want you to have health care. So the idea is to go to the UN to file a complaint. The team, we had a meeting with 2 individuals. One is Martha Schmidt. She's a lawyer from the National Lawyers Guild. She's also part of the Human Rights Framework Project. And we also spoke to Dr. Vicky Casanova Willis, and she's also part of another human rights organization. So our goal is to reach out to folks who are the expert, talk to them. How do we file this properly? How do we approach the UN? Well, none of us are experts. We don't know anything about this process, but it is possible to do it. So we had like a 2-hour meeting discussing this. I also spoke to Martha days ago over lunch, and she broke everything down to me. And I was like, okay, I got my work ahead of me. I got to do a lot of homework, but it is possible. And so that's our first big next step.
I think a lot of people will be excited to know that the march wasn't just one day. It's
right.
it's you guys are doing more,
Right.
which
Right.
I think is fantastic.
Right.
I'm going to ask you more about that, but let's
Yeah.
have Lisa, if you can introduce yourself and talk about your background and how you came to be such a activist advocate for M4A.
Well, thank you so much, Jen, for doing this. And I was in DC, although I didn't come over and introduce myself. You were pretty darn busy running around that day. But it was great to be there. And it was great to meet all of these people who, the work that was done behind the scenes by Sharif and all of the organizers is pretty phenomenal. Just hearing about it after the fact, after it was all done, and then listening to people talk was amazing. So I got into activism because, to be very honest, Connor Lamb is my rep. I live in his district, and he is a Democrat who is all on board for opening up new drilling sites and opening up a cracker plant that's going to spew volatile organic chemicals into a typography which is like the second or third worst air quality in the country. I started there, but I also I have a heavy finance background going back 20 some years. I was an auditor in public accounting. I ended up in the banking industry all before like the dot bombs and through the mortgage crisis. The bank was the only bank that was seized by the FDIC. Did a transition there. And then I ended up in healthcare as a finance director. And I did that for 10 years with 2 private healthcare providers. We were Medicare certified providers. So we were billing Medicare. Didn't have any private insurance billing at first. And then the ACA passed while I was doing that. And with my background in heavy industry, any heavy industry like banking or healthcare, it's all very heavily regulated. So policy is just something that we had to operationalize, right? So I'm very capable of reading policy and understanding government. I've been a government junkie since I was 9, right? So as the ACA was implemented, I was furiously working with my healthcare provider to try and operationalize that policy. And all of a sudden now I've got to get the company credentialed with 20 different insurance providers now, instead of just billing Medicare, Medicaid, and some plans that were retirement plans from, federal people who have retirement and some of our retired union organizations and whatnot. Now, all of a sudden, I've got to get credentialed with every commercial entity out there, and they all bill differently. Different billing formats, different billing rules, right? So what I saw as a provider trying to get paid, all these private insurance companies would deny our claims. Sometimes they deny every claim we billed, whether it was right or not, because they could. So what happens then? We would have to, as a provider, pursue that. So my cost for running the finance department, specifically just the billing function, went from costing about 4.5% to over 33% just for my department over a period of 7 years. Okay. The denials, the time spent trying to collect money versus staying compliant, making sure that my clinical staff was getting the right funding to get them trained appropriately to take care of your staff that is working on patients out in the community. That all went by the wayside because when you can't keep your revenue stream coming in, it's all hands on deck, right?
Right.
So when Bernie came along with this idea, and I did know about the bill that was in the House 676 for years and years and years. If anybody who knows anything or cares at all about this topic knew that bill had been out there forever. We also knew that it had its issues. But when Bernie ran and grabbed that thing and rewrote that legislation and introduced it, first thing I did was pour into it and look at it, and I knew what I was looking for. What handed the insurance companies the ability to vertically integrate and to literally underwrite plans like Medicare Advantage plans with Medicare tax fund dollars was Medicare Part C, which you never hear about. You hear about A, you hear about B, you hear about D, but there's this little thing in there called Part C that nobody knows anything about because it's infuriating what it did. It gave the insurance companies the ability to put private providers out of business. It enabled them to deny claims. It enabled them to deny care. And now we've graduated into the underwriting of these claims to literally dictate treatment protocols. So out on Twitter, frustrated, angry. And one day, and I have to say that initially I was too against state-based healthcare initiatives at the time, because my thought was we finally have a potential presidential candidate that I truly believed was going to win. Okay.
Yeah.
Why would we take this energy right now, where for the first time we have the ability to do this, right? In my naivete, like we all were naive, right? We're not naive anymore, right? We've graduated from that. We actually got a doctorate in that. We can't deny that now, okay? But at the time, it didn't make a lot of sense to me. And I was working with a man by the name of Dr. Joe Jarvis, who we work with now. He's showing up tonight.
Right.
And he was trying to tell me state-based this and state-based that. And I said, I get it, but we've got this opportunity right now. Why would we do this? Okay. I'm working with Dr. Joe Jarvis again. I ran smack dab into Laura Fielding. And I didn't run into Laura Fielding because of her healthcare necessarily. I ran into this woman out on Twitter who was making her voice known about her craftivists and craftivism, the red berets that are all hand knit, right? We've got our buttons on here. I've got all kinds of stuff. Wrote the bill. Nina and Dr. Dooley are up here. I've got the People's March button over here, Medicare for All, right?
And so people know Laura Fielding founded Red Berets for Medicare for All.
She founded it. So what Red Berets are a group of craftivists that knit and donate not only their resources and their time, but they believe in the idea that all of us need healthcare. So we like to refer to it as the red thread. And we're crafting a fabric that brings all of us together under the understanding that we have to have universal coverage for the people of this country, right? And how do we do that with these individuals that put so much of themselves out there? And she came up with this idea. And we need more crafters. We need more people to get involved. So if you're interested, you go to Medicare, Red Berets, Medicare for All, spell it all out.com. You can volunteer there or you can talk to us and we'll help you do whatever it is you need to do to get started. And one thing that Laura and I talked about years ago was trying to start a 50-state strategy for this. And then we started doing things like donating our berets to causes so that the money that is gained from selling those berets goes straight to the people and the cause. And Laura teamed up with Whole Washington, and the story then wrote itself. So there's a bunch of stuff going on here, but let's just say that it's the people in the communities that have the emergent need urgently for healthcare. Those are your people on the ground. And if we can elevate those stories, and if the Red Berets and March for Medicare for All because we're all working towards the same end goal here. If we can amplify those stories like Flint, those individuals in Flint, if they can enact 1881A, and they can, Biden could do it with a stroke of a pen, at least the people in Flint could have the best health care possible that will enable them to get out of a network and walk in the door as sick as they are and actually get some treatment. And those are the kinds of things that, as a community, grassroots community, working with the National March for Medicare for All, Red Berets will step in and blast the heck out of that and be the voice for that. Aaron Brockovich is interviewing mothers that are doing the same type of stuff. We want to be that red thread that connects everybody together, and we'll help out with requests. We'll help push as much as we can. And this petition to the UN,
which we'll show everyone. For those of you watching, we'll show it to you and go through it.
It's necessary. It is absolutely necessary. And people can say, oh, well, it's pro-formative. Well, you're damn right it is. We got to get pro-formative on every level. It's time for en masse. What are your horror stories? What is your community dealing with? Because let's all be honest here. That Medicare for All bill's got to go through the Energy Committee. It's got to go through the Ways and Means Committee.
Yep.
Right? Why would a Medicare bill have to go through an Energy Committee? Because it is the energy companies that are contaminating the areas, right, that are underwritten by your local insurance entity that owns all the data on what's going on in that area from a disease perspective. If we had universal coverage, all that data is going to get aggregated by CMS. And it's not going to be a secret anymore how sick people are getting from those contaminants. That incorporates in the environment. It incorporates in the military industrial complex, the fossil fuel industry.
Yep.
Okay. This is all interconnected. So is MMT from the standpoint of, it's not a theory, guys. Government chooses the programs that they are going to fund. Period. The end. MMT is not a theory. The theory is this concept of why in the heck won't they do what needs to be done for the common society?
i.e., how are you going to pay for it?
Right? We get this, how are you going to pay for it? Are you kidding me? How do we fund the military industrial complex? Let me give you a clue. Fiat currency and government program that they approved. Right? Yeah. So this $3.5 trillion reconciliation plan, that is the plan that's finally going to start doing some of this government program that's going to give us federal jobs. It's going to give us a child care tax credit. It's going to enable us to go to college for 2 years. It will not give us Medicare for all. But damn it, it's going to expand Medicare to give those who are eligible, and by the way, lower that age. And I'm not going to say an age because I hope to heck somebody's made something more than just 60, okay? But eyes, hearing, vision, hearing, dental, long-term care, which takes away the asset forfeiture of those poor individuals who have to go on Medicaid and sign over their assets because mom's got to be in a home because she doesn't know who I am and it's going to cost us $6,000 and we're not going to have it. So here's my inheritance. Great. This is all interconnected. Filing for bankruptcy is over 500,000 people annually due to medical debt. This is all hands on deck here. It's all interrelated. And Dr. Joe Firestone and I had a conversation here right before we came on your show because I said to him, I said, Dr. Joe, here's what I want to say, but I don't want to step in a pile of garbage. Could you please tell me if I'm off base on anything? And he said, nope, you've got it. You've got it right. Government programs are all funded by fiat spend all of them, we are choosing not to help the people. And the preamble of the Constitution, right? Provide for the common defense. Well, we do that in spades. It's the support the general welfare that we ignore.
Right.
Yeah.
So I've gone forever. I'm sorry, but
no, it's okay. I wanted to let you guys talk and give people your backgrounds, because I think that's valuable. Here you are, people with two different backgrounds and common goals. And that, I think, is the heart of everyone fighting for Medicare for all. It doesn't matter what our backgrounds is. We all have a role to play. My role is journalism. And you two share some roles and have other different roles. And that, I think, is so important to highlight. Everybody out there who believes in this has a role to play and can contribute. So next, to kind of give some context so people see what this march was, this specifically in Washington, D.C., because that's the one I covered. Colin, if you can play about 3 minutes or so, I'll tell you when to pull out of the march clip.
We Americans tax ourselves more for healthcare than do the citizens of any other country. And yet, at the time when we need it, we are the citizens of the first world least likely to be able to be rescued from conditions where known clinical science is effective. We spend more. We do so because we are trying to give a gift to ourselves of healthcare, and yet we are failing to get that result.
When his son passed away, he had over $100,000 in medical debt. And Obama came in and offered to help him pay for it. We don't have an Obama. We do not have an Obama. We do not have someone who is cool with just bailing people out.
I'm sorry, I can't break it down like some people. We're going to support this bill. Hell no! We support that if you're sick, you go to hospital, you have a right to be treated. I have had several occasions when Fidel Castro was living to go to Cuba. Best damn health care I ever got in my life. The United States had thrown an embargo around them, but yet still they were treating their people. Best mental health you could get was in Cuba. From your head to your feet. Now we live in a capitalist, greedy ass system that could give everybody health care in America. They want to talk about, when people ask me what health care is, I said, you want to talk, they talking about crime. I said, that's health care. They talk about homelessness, that's health care. All of that, education, that's health care. That's health care.
And I'd like to give you a short list of what we got in return. The U.S. is ranked number 36 in the world in access to water and sanitation. 36 out of our peer countries. For anyone that wants to know, that's 36 out of 37. America has the highest incarceration rate in the motherfucking world. In the land of the free, home of the brave, we lock up more people for shit. And the people that do the most harm get elected to Congress.
All right, Colin, you can pull out. So that was to give you viewers at home an idea of what these marches were all about. So they were literally marching, as well as having very impassioned speakers, again, from all different backgrounds with different stories, with a common goal in mind. So I guess I'll start out by asking you, I'll get this question. I was debating whether or not to bring this part up, but a viewer has a question, and I'm not taking viewer questions yet, folks. This one just stood out to me, but we might do that later on. So Doug Grinberg's asks or mentions or thinks that the Medicare for All movement lost major traction with Bernie's loss in 2020. Do you think, first of all, that that's valid? If it is valid, what do we do about it? I think I can guess at your answer to the second part, but go ahead. Sharif,
No,
you can start.
Yeah, I think it's very valid. Because a lot of people tie the Medicare for All with Bernie. So if he drops out or he's not pushing the way we want him to push, or he was pushing Medicare for All, people are not going to be engaged. I mean, by nature, people look for leadership. People look at leaders. And this is why I said that leadership killed movements, because it's all about, personality or ego or whatever have you. And this is why we need people like Lisa, like myself, like so many other activists out there keep pushing this movement, regardless of the fact we actually have someone in office. The reason why I don't like electoral politics per se is because too often we focus on the person being elected, and we don't really believe that things can be changed until we elect this one person. We're putting all this hope on this one individual, and we're not putting the hope that the American people, we can do a lot. I mentioned earlier that the American people deserve health care. We earned that, and we need to get to a space where that we recognize that we can be the change that we want in society. We don't need to focus on electoral solutions. I mean, what I mean by that is we don't have to elect someone. We can go out there and pressure people, because no matter who's in office, I mentioned this on another podcast too. No matter who's in office, you still have to pressure that person to do whatever you want them to do. Like, no one gets into office and they're going to automatically say, hey, I'm going to just do this one thing. You're going to have to pressure people and you're going to have to knock on their door and make phone calls or whatever have you. Remember you ran on this. You need to do this. So you're going to do that anyway. So I wouldn't put stock on people, but the best way to go about it is to go back to the community, start back at the center, be community focused and reach out to your community and ask them, what are your needs? Even outside of healthcare, you see a need that needs to be addressed, see who else is talking about that subject. And if no one isn't talking about that subject, ask other organizing activists, how do I start to make a noise about this issue? How do I get this started? Who can I reach out on Twitter? Who can I reach out on Facebook? Who can I reach out on social media to be helpful in this area? That's what I did with this. Like I said, I had no experience with activism, no experience with organizing. I just started reaching out to folks and asking them questions and said, hey, what do I do? Started taking notes, joining Zoom meetings. I joined even, I went to several Rise and Resist meetings, took notes, went to Move People's Party's meetings, took some notes. And that's what it really takes, is that you have to have the burning desire to actually want to do this. So the answer is, if you don't care that much, if you're looking for someone else to do it, then obviously it's not going to get done. But if you actually care about the issue and you really want to make those changes, you're going to see it happen. You just have to just want it.
I think that's pretty inspiring for people, because I think there are a lot of folks out there who want to take action, who believe strongly in policies like Medicare for All, but feel like, oh, I'm not an activist. I'm not one of these leaders. But you saw this need, you saw a hole in people doing something about it, and you got out there and did it. And not to diminish, online activism and social media can help a lot, but you did things in the real world, where others can see you. And, there in DC, I saw people walking by who were curious and who were stopping and paying attention. And so that makes a difference. Lisa, do you have anything to add on that point?
I think that what we are seeing, activism is a culture shift. I do not believe that you've got to have some burn in your belly and in your soul to stand up and say, I'm going to be an activist. Okay. What I did, I stumbled on someone. I was talking about the intersectionality of contaminants and healthcare and the insurance industry and all of that, and Medicare for All we needed, right? And, my old family, oh, that's socialism and blah, blah, blah. But someone introduced me to a group of people called the Battle of Homestead Foundation, which actually is a group of individuals who are saving the archives and the history of what a lot of people know as the Pinkerton riots that happened when the Homestead mill was taken over by, or shut down, and the town back in the late 1800s was literally going to starve to death because of it. And they had a battle, right? Which was all about organizing for labor. But what that group of individuals has morphed into is a home for the activists in Allegheny County. We've got environmentalists in there, we've got historians, we've got labor, we have healthcare activists, we have religious community leaders trying to feed their people in COVID. I was working on the census, and from going to that meeting, we actually turned one of the zones for the county within 3 weeks because we got into this network of food distribution through the churches down in one of the poorer parts of the county, which was a phenomenal understanding for me of how to get penetration into the disenfranchised communities that aren't online. They're working 3 or 4 jobs trying to keep a roof over their head, and they're standing in line to get food, right? And what I saw there the weekend that I worked it was a beautiful bringing together of community because people cared about one another. Not, oh, I'm doing this out of the goodness of my heart kind of thing. This is our community and we're going to take care of it. And nobody feels less than. This is just us coming together to give to one another, right? And from that place, somehow I got tapped into Health Care for All PA, one of the local chapters. And I sat down and talked to them, which led me to organizing Conner Lamb was going to have a town hall. So I got on the phone and I called my elected officials and I called my activists from those organizations that I was in. We put 75 people in a room and all we did was hammer him on the fact that he ran, on being willing to work with anybody in Congress who was going to improve healthcare and reduce those costs. And we were able to put him on the spot and say, what have you done? What have you done to improve healthcare and
there we go. Continue.
Anyhow, for an hour and a half, we got at him. And by the time it was over, we had one reporter write an article, and it was stated that never again will it be said that the constituents of Mr. Lamb don't want Medicare for all.
Wow.
So, you know, you stumble into this.
Right.
You really do. And if you want help on that front, please reach out. Reach out to me. Reach out to the Red Berets. We're trying to put a network together here of all people who know that enacting Medicare for all is the right answer. It should have been done years ago. For God's sake, there's no excuse for it. We've been sitting here for 60 years. That was the original intent.
Right.
And we still can't get it done.
Right. Yep.
So how else do we do it other than to amplify each other's voices? Other than that, we're going to be doing this again for what, until the climate crisis takes us down. I don't know.
Well, one of the things that stands out to me constantly, as someone who wants Medicare for all desperately for the people, is that this is not an issue that is just a progressive issue. This is a human issue. And I can't remember which one of you mentioned this, but I think it was maybe you, Lisa, but you said wanting healthcare even for people who aren't, like you or don't have the same ideas as you, or even bad people. Wanting healthcare as a human right is wanting healthcare as a human right. And it's something we're all struggling with. Colin, if you can play in just a second. So yesterday, I'm sure all the viewers at home, and I'm sure you, Lisa and Sharif, saw that there was a bomb threat at the Capitol. And this was a white man, 49 years old, from North Carolina, from the South. And he drove up to DC and did Facebook Lives on the way. And we said that he didn't want to kill anyone. He wanted desperately to speak with Joe Biden because he feels Biden is not serving the American people. And he said that his vehicle was rigged with a bomb and that there were 4 additional bombs. And he emphasized over and over that he didn't want to hurt anyone. That's not to excuse his behavior. He was being a terrorist. This is just what happened. But one of those videos did not get media play. A clip of one of those videos did not get much media play. And that was of him. Yeah, of course. It's not a surprise. Of course it's not. This was a clip of the guy's name. The terrorist's name is Floyd Ray Roseberry. And he spoke in a desperate voice about healthcare denying him services. He needed shots for his knees in order to help him walk. He's having difficulty or pain walking. His wife has skin cancer or had skin cancer and said they basically had to chop her nose off. Those things were not covered by healthcare. And so out of desperation, he spoke about that on his way to threaten at the Capitol. So go ahead and play that call and then we'll discuss.
I went to the doctor yesterday. I was going to get some of those cell therapy shots they've been bragging about giving to the athletes all these years. Just so I'd be able to walk. I go in, get ready, the doctor says, oh, no shots today. Insurance don't cover it anymore. Really? My wife goes to the doctor. She's got cancer. And they told her it wouldn't cover it no more because it was cosmetic. It was on her face. Cosmetic hell, they had to take half her fucking nose off. Still going today, paying for it. Where's your insurance at? Biden? Obama? Where's your insurance at?
So, Lisa, what is your kind of take on that video? In light of what happened, what he ended up doing, threatening the Capitol with a bomb, but also him talking about his healthcare needs.
So let's just be clear. What he was doing was the way that he was trying to get attention was obviously the wrong way to go about it. Okay. But if you watch that and your heart does not break for the type of oppression and human rights violation, really, that he's going through with his knees. But let's talk about the fact that his wife has melanoma and they had to cut half her nose off and it wasn't covered. You know, there are a lot of families out there that have stories like that and so much worse. Okay. And I always tell people this: you think you've got great insurance until you have an emergency that has to do with something major. You don't know how good your insurance is. I promise you, because I build them all. You don't know.
Wow.
So I think that that's the condition of the American people. Anybody who's been sick In this environment, you're paying 20% on average of your take-home income in America just to be insured for the year. Listen, when you start devaluing human life at a fundamental level of being able to be human and be ill and get taken care of, folks, it's fascism. And we got to stop pretending it's not. It's the ugliest, dirtiest word you can throw around, in my opinion, from a standpoint of what kind of regime we're living under. We're human beings. You start allowing human life to be devalued. We all are devalued. Some of us have experienced it on different levels for a really, really long damn time. But we can't walk in each other's shoes. All we can do is try to understand and learn and relate to one another and lift each other up, because we're all going to go under if we don't do it. I think we are all at a place where, unless you're still asleep or cognitive dissonance is set in, we're running out of time.
Yeah.
It also speaks to the mental health problems that we're growing in this country right now too. So many of us need someone to talk to. We need therapy. We all need therapy. And the fact that the media didn't want to cover that because it's not because it's heartbreaking to watch, because it is, because a lot of Americans are about to pop right now. They know that, and it will start, for lack of better words, a revolution that I don't think the country's ready for. A lot of Americans right now are very triggered. When I was in DC, there's so many homeless tent cities. I'm here in Washington State. I'm staying in Tacoma. I got here in Seattle. There's so many tent cities here too. It broke my heart to be in downtown Seattle. Just be really honest with you. There's like so many boarded up businesses both in DC and in Seattle, and you see all the homeless people there. And these are not like homeless people that have been there for like 10 years. These are like newly evicted people, and no one's covering it. No one's talking about it. New York too. I live in New York. You see some of that too. You have like these they have these they have these like refrigerators almost, where like the community in Crown Heights is giving out food for people, and you can just go in and grab food. And you have so much despair throughout the whole country. So that video is just echoing all the stuff I'm talking about. There's so many people on the brink of, like, I just want to be destructive because no one's listening to me. And we all know violence is the language of the unheard. And by not showing that video, you want more people to be unheard because you want more violence. You're just asking for that to happen because you're choosing not to listen to those folks. In DC, when we had the march, I did more listening to people's stories than the speeches, because people was there venting their frustration about how they don't have healthcare. We have so many members in our coalition who are terminal. Some of our collaborators, we won't see them anymore. We just won't. They're fighting like hell to make sure we get healthcare, and we don't have coverage for them. We can't afford it.
But we can't afford it. We all know we can afford it.
Right.
Decouple healthcare coverage from your job.
Right.
I see healthcare as the cornerstone, the keystone to all of it. You want to take the silence. You want to silence the lobbies on Capitol Hill that really run all of this. You do universal healthcare coverage. You take the pharma lobby out. You take the insurance lobby down. You take the hiding of the contaminants that are causing disease. You take that out of the equation.
Right.
It is the key.
No, I say that all the time too. The number one fight in this country is healthcare. Once we get healthcare for every American, we can solve so many other social issues. It's very simple. Everyone always mentions France. They mentioned about how they're ready to vest up We don't vest up here. You know what I mean? They're battle tested in France. You don't have that mechanism here, because we don't have a history of like fighting for our rights the way they do there. But they also have their healthcare. They have that
safety net. They've
And
got
they
a
have that
safety net.
They have that safety net. We need that here, and that's why we have so much pushback against not having healthcare here. That's my personal belief. I feel like once we get healthcare as a wrap, we can fight for so much more. And watching that video again, just hearing about it again, is really heartbreaking, because that's just proving that again why we need to go to the UN, because that would never happen if this man can just him and his wife can get healthcare. They're not going to spin that story. They're going to spin, a terrorist tried to blow up something in DC, but never mind the fact what caused that man to do that. I'm not excusing his behavior because it's not right. But again, let's go back and see why that happened. Because again, he's screaming out for help and no one's listening to him. So
you create your terrorists, don't you?
Yep.
It is what it is. You got to be in a pretty damn desperate space.
Yeah, absolutely. In a second, Colin's going to play a video of Marianne Williamson, who spoke at the March for Medicare for All, to set up the conversation about electoral politics. Because I asked her this question. I said, a lot of people are turning away from electoral politics. What do you think about this? So while Colin sets that up, I have to go off screen for a second, but don't worry, I'll be right back. But I want to know what you guys think. And again, there are a lot of different opinions about this, about the role that electoral politics plays in Medicare for All versus, or in addition to, activism and direct action.
Well,
whoever wants to go.
Yeah, you kind of
I thought you were going to show first.
Well,
no, sorry, he's still finding it because I just thought of it.
You do need an inside outside view. Even though I don't agree with electoral politics, and the reason why I don't agree with it, because a lot of people feel that once that special someone they want to vote for gets in, all the problems are going to be solved, and that's not true. So in my mind, you need street heat, and you need electoral solutions. But again, you don't need electoral solutions in the sense that you need to focus on the person you want to get in. You need that person to pass that legislation, because again, we are going to need someone in office to pass any piece of legislation. That's just how it is, unfortunately. But other than that, that should be the only reason why you should even care about electoral solutions. You know that that's the end goal, to get whatever piece of legislation you need to get passed, not because they can solve the issue. You need that individual to force them to solve your issue. So again, you still need that pressure. You still need that street heat, because again, every social movement, every piece of legislation that ever got passed started from the street first, then it got into electoral solutions. So you still need the street heat. You still need that person to actually do the job and force them to do that.
So all I want to say to that is activism is your get out the vote ground game. We have let the politicians dictate what the conversation is.
Right.
We need to flip that. The tail's wagging the dog.
Right. Absolutely. 100%. 100%. I mean, again, I said this on the podcast the other day. Like, I said there's no difference between AOC and Joe Crowley. And a lot of people disagree with that. And a lot of people was like, how dare you think that AOC is just as bad or just as worse or whatever. It's not the point that I'm making. Every politician have a job. They're not going to put you as a priority first. They're just not. Because if it did, we would have Medicare for all right now. You still need to pressure whoever's in office. If I have to pressure you, you're not an ally. That's how I feel. I'm sorry if people get upset. If I have to pressure you, you're not an ally. So in my mind, they're all the same. But again, like I said, their whole goal, for me, is to pressure them to get what I want. I'm not looking to them and say I'm voting for them, and I feel comfortable that they're going to do the job. That's not going to happen. I know I have to pressure that person, whoever it is, whether that is Bernie, whether that's Nina, whether that's AOC, whether that's Jamil Jayapal. I look at all of them. I have to pressure them and get them to do what I want. They're not the end. You know, they're just a hurdle that we have to cross.
There are means. There are means. My
Absolutely.
My take on this is, well, let me put it this way. My electoral is activism, because if the electorate knows what needs to happen, then when they go to those polls, of course they're going to pick the best candidate, right?
Right.
So they are not mutually exclusive in my mind, okay? But I am of the place that I've got there at this point. But I will tell you this, I am most certainly going to lift up community activists in their ask or in their need.
Right.
Way more so, that's how I'm going to spend my energy, so that when they've got to go to the polls, right, in the last 2 weeks, when people really start paying attention to who's running and why, hopefully they're going to be like, okay, these are my issues. Where do these guys on this ballot land? Instead of going and saying, well, I don't really know who anybody was, so I just pulled the lever on the Democratic side or the Republican side or whatever. That's what's wrong in America, and we have to change that culture. That's my take.
Right.
All right, Colin, if you can play what Marianne Williamson had to say on this point, please.
For all. What do you think it's going to take for the politicians in office, the electeds, to catch up with public opinion? Even when you add in Republicans, the right, the majority of folks still support Medicare for all.
We have midterm elections next year, and we have to get very, very busy around those, including and most specifically around the primaries. And people need to find out in every town hall, do you or do you not stand for Medicare for all? If people go to candidatesummit.com, I have endorsed some primary candidates who do stand as part of their platform for Medicare for all. And let's be very clear, the Democratic establishment is not supporting those candidates. So we, the people, have to support them, just as so many people are out supporting Nina Turner today in Cleveland and Akron. We shouldn't kid ourselves, and I don't think most people do. There's a limit to how much these rallies matter. They are important to go to because of the energy that it creates, but in terms of real electoral change, we have to get involved in these primaries. And the Democratic establishment feels, for the most part, that the centrist candidates, the corporatist Democrats, have a better chance at winning. I don't feel that way, especially when you see that 70% of the American people support Medicare for all, and a tiny margin of even Republicans support Medicare for all. I think it's absurd to say that the more progressive candidates who stand for that would not win. What's really going on there is that those Democrat establishment moderate corporatist candidates feel that they would lose support with their own corporate donors. So we all have to get very busy with electoral politics right now. And when I say right now, it's because of these primaries.
All right. So any response to what Marianne had to say? Lisa?
I totally agree with her. And again, if you're tied into an activist community in your area, right? People are going to be talking about who's running.
Right.
I don't know how you separate out activism from electoral. Don't confuse doing campaign push with, I mean, that is an electoral function, okay? But the people of the United States have looked at that as like the only thing that they can do. Yeah. Find a candidate and push the candidate, and then the candidate gets into office, and what do? Pivot, right? They even talk about it. If you listen to some of the politicos, the real wonky folk, they'll be like, okay, well, they got in, so let's wait for the pivot. Like they anticipate it, right? They know that people are going to run on stuff and then they're not going to deliver. If you get your community going and you take a stand on, these are the things that we need to deal with because I've got a cracker plant going to open up. I've got a pipeline coming in. I've got fracking beds all over the place, blah, 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 right? And I get the community. And I'm talking community. I don't care if you've got a red or a blue practice jersey on. That got nothing to do with anything. We're talking about what are the community needs. If you get the communities going, then they're going to come out and they're going to vote and they're going to call and they're going to pressure and they're going to question. And all of a sudden now you're going to get the politicians going, holy crap, I've got one hell of a healthcare activist community in Allegheny County. And you're not going to want to ignore us, because trust me, we're in a lot more places than just sitting here with you, Jen, right? I mean, I've got my activist red beret hat on. You haven't even scratched the surfaces to the pots that I've got my hands in. That's what we do, right? And the more you get your hands in the pot, we get to stir it. And we need those politicians to not be able to ignore the people on the ground. That's how we build momentum. That's what the march did. Everybody that stood up to say, hey, I'll do a march, they're people on the ground in a community that believe in Medicare for all. And I will bet you that every single one of those activists has got a litany of things that they've got their hands in, just like I do.
Right.
Makes sense. How about you, Sharif? What do you think about what Marianne said?
Oh, I'm going to have to disagree with Marianne, actually. I love Marianne Williamson. She did a fantastic job. I actually had a chance to talk to her for a little bit. But I feel that's part of the problem. I feel that too many people invest all their energy into electoral solutions, and nobody, once they vote for someone, they feel that's it. I did my job already. I voted. I canvassed for this person. I did phone banking. What else do they need for me to do? And so I mentioned this earlier, that you kind of need both. You need an inside and outside strategy. I personally feel it doesn't matter who's in office, because you still have to pressure that person to do whatever it is you need them to do. I mean, I do understand the mechanism that it's easier to pressure, say, someone like Nita Turner than it is someone like the person she ran against. So I totally agree with that. I would never say that it's harder. One candidate is easier than the other, or one candidate is harder than the other. We'll never argue that, because there's proof of that. So it's easier to get someone else to get them to lean towards your position than someone else will. However, I look at it as, if I still have to pressure you to do something, you're not an ally to me. And so it's going to be really hard for me to ever invest in electoral politics in the future, because of so much of my community, so much that's been going on, it's not still being properly represented. And so I do agree that you do need both, because again, we need the street heat. We need people out there in the street and be politically active. But at the same time, I still need to push any politician who gets into office to pass Medicare for all, no matter who it is. And so they're not going to just willingly do it. If any candidate in office that willingly do it, I was sent home to spend time with my kids. Unfortunately, that's never going to happen. So I have to push them. We got to be active. But I do hear a point. There is a difference between certain candidates, and we do need to highlight those folks. But at the end of the day, once they get into office, it gets a little different. It gets a little tricky. It's a whole other world once they're in office.
One of the things that kind of has stood out to me through after Force the Vote, the push for Force the Vote, unfortunately, because I supported it, it didn't happen. But also after the march leading up to the March for Medicare for All, and after, there seems to be a lot of people online, or maybe it's just some of the most vocal, who have the mindset of, let's take Nina Turner. So if they did not show up for the march closest to them, then they don't support Medicare for All at all. Which was misinformation in the case of Nina, because she, on the same day as the March for Medicare for All, she spoke about Medicare for All, as did AOC. I mean, AOC is a whole different story. She's actually in office and is not doing anything, so her talking about it doesn't matter. But there was a lot of misinformation going around, like Nina doesn't support Medicare for All, when she's literally running ads about it, and she didn't come to It was the weekend right before her election. So her election was on a Tuesday, which she lost, of course, for viewers who will recall that. She only had 2 weekends left, and then it was on that last Tuesday. And there wasn't the closest march was in Columbus, and it would have taken all of her campaign day, basically. But people were, and this isn't just about Nina. My question really boils down to, what is your take on people becoming so attached to hashtags of force the vote? And I'm really condensing by saying hashtags, but hashtags of force the vote and March for Medicare for All, and not focusing so much on the policy of Medicare for All. So if you didn't come to the march, you're canceled. If you didn't support force the vote, you're canceled, and you're not a true Medicare for All supporter.
Yeah, I disagree with that. My team and I, we reached out to Nina Turner months ago, so we knew months ago she was not going to be there. So for anyone who's saying that, we didn't reach out to her and, she's a bad faith actor or anything like that, she was very honest and very clear that she was running a campaign and she could not make it. And she wished us well. And I knew that she was going to talk about Medicare for All the day of. I told people that if she doesn't mention anything about Medicare for All, if she doesn't run on that, then that's telling. But the fact that she kept her promise she ran on it, she spoke about it, I don't think you can actually say that. So again, it goes back to what I was saying to you earlier, that people need to start demigodding, politicians. You know what I mean? Yeah. I just feel that you need to go out there and push them to do what you want them to do anyway. So I don't think you should lean. It goes back to don't lean on anybody. Go out there and be proactive. But also to get to your point, Jen, about if hashtag force to vote, if you're not part of that, you're not a leftist. If you're not part of the March for Medicare, you're not for healthcare. It's ridiculous, in my opinion. It's about the issues, about the policy. The whole point of politics is to convince people that your position is better. So what you need to do out there is go out there and pressure people and ask them, this is, why don't you support this? What safety net do you have? What strategy should I be doing? We should be out there in the community and talking to folks and getting them on our side, growing the movement, so we can have more people in the street, again, street heat, so that when the times come when we need to pressure a politician and they look out their door, they have thousands of people outside their doorstep versus like having 20 people outside their doorstep. You have 1,000 people out their doorstep. That politician is going to be like, oh shit, I need to do something because I want to get elected. I want to get elected again. Mm-hmm. So that's the energy should be there. The energy should be us coming together, us being united, so we can push these people to do what we want. Because again, I'm gonna keep saying that you got to push them. Stop worrying about who's who's for us, who's against us. Again, once they get in office, you have to push them anyway. So let's get to the point of pushing people to our position.
And I'll just say this because I look at things I take a stand back, right? Nina Turner's campaign was a special election. And if you don't know this, special elections are notorious for abysmal turnout, unless it happens to line up with another election cycle, number one. Number two, we have an administration that has no desire to even bring a bill to the floor, let alone even if it passes, it's going to get vetoed, right? Imagine running as a Democrat in a district that, no matter how you want to slice it, has traditionally gone more central in its patterns, right? What Nina did was not to not pay attention to the march. What she did was everything in her power under the circumstances as they were laid out to get herself that candidacy. And I will say this, not in defense of anything that was said about Nina, because I love Nina to death. I've got her button on my head, right? And I met Nina in person at the People Summit in Chicago several years ago. I mean, I believe in what Nina says, and I believe in the goodness of what she wants to do for the people. I don't question that. But I will tell you, once you have to get into office, it changes things.
Yeah.
And I will also say this, we have to meet people where they are.
Right.
And Nina's defeat, no matter whether or not we want to admit it, was a beatdown that the centrists wanted to hand us again.
Right.
And I was in hospice, so I am really tied into grief and loss. The week, 10 days after all of that went down, let's even give it a week, let's get 2 weeks, right? Americans don't know how to grieve loss because we don't accept death. We hide it. It happens, right? We don't talk or rally around families whose loved ones are terminally ill and dying. So we can't even extrapolate out grief associated with a loss that doesn't have to deal with death.
Right.
We don't allow ourselves to live that because our mental health care sucks.
Yeah.
Seriously, right? So I don't fault people for whatever it is that invoked in them, because Nina was another leader who they sank this time. She won't sink next time. If she would have been in a normal election where her, us having to go to the polls for her, and she's not in my district. Let's just be very clear here. We're talking about a congressional district, and the rest of the country that we were all working in out for, trying to get marches going and activists able to do what they had to do. That was going on all over the place, right? It had never been done before. And it just so happened that it landed right on top of the weekend before her election, right? Let's just be honest, guys. That was a bad timing for everybody that was concerned about both issues. It really just was. But the grief that people felt and people lashing out, that's loss of another leader that we really wanted and needed to get in there. I think we need to give each other a little bit of room here.
Right.
Because that was another political assassination attempt.
Mm-hmm.
It also speaks to the fact that we don't have any sometimes I wish the left was a little bit more Republican, because you know how they always stick together. The left, we don't stick together at all.
Mm-hmm.
We're a house divided. I'm still trying to work that out. On myself.
We're working hard though.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure that out. I'm still trying to figure out how can we connect these dots together.
Well, that's a good point. There is so much division on the left right now. It's probably more visible for those of us who are very online, as I think probably we all are.
Right.
But there's a lot of division and a lot of differences in ideas and opinions about, even if we have this shared policy goal of having Medicare for all in this country, there's so many, as is human nature, everyone has different ideas about how to get there. But to your point, Sharif, there's no, it seems like there's no room for those differences in the minds of some folks. And so you're immediately canceled, so-called, if you disagree on strategy or on XYZ point or whatever. And some people are even feeling kind of nihilistic now on Medicare for all and politics in general, on life in general. How do we kind of make sense of this? How do we get people to understand? Because I personally feel like we can't achieve this if we don't have more unity, and if people don't understand that it is okay to disagree, to bounce ideas off of one another towards this shared goal.
I think it's also we're not used to doing that, and not only that, we're not used to coming together. We're not used to that. We're also not used to. We're not also not used to the fact that your position on one issue doesn't mean that you also agree with that other person's other issue you don't agree with. Like, so for example, this is like an obvious example. Let's say I'm for Medicare for all, but let's say I'm pro-gun, right? So people on the left feel like I can't work with Sharif, for example, because he believes in guns, but he also believes for Medicare for all. I can't work with him because he believes in pro-gun, because that goes against my other belief. Like, they will never fight for me if I'm a true advocate. I'm all about Medicare for all. I will fight, tooth and nail to make sure you get it. But because I also believe in gun rights, they will never work with me, because the idea is that I'm tainted, and I can't navigate around you because, your other policy or your other, criteria doesn't work for my criteria. And so we're very, on the left, we're very hive-minded. We need to be all inclusive or nothing. And I would like one day for us not to be that way. I like for us to fight for like one issue. We all agree on this one issue. Let's push for this one issue. And I think because we're not used to that, we're not used to having we're going to fight together no matter what our other beliefs are. Let's just fight for this one issue, because we're not used to having unity here. We're very house divided. Just so far I'm learning, speaking to other activists, speaking to other organizers, is asking them questions about why is it so hard to get another group who also fundamentally agree with us to work on this one issue together. And I'm hearing all the different ideas, I'm hearing all the different opinions, and I'm starting to really realize that it is because we're just not used to it. It's just not something that is ingrained in our culture on the left, and that we need to restructure how we do things. We have to learn that today we're allies, and maybe tomorrow we're not, and that's okay. And I think that that's a problem. I think we need to start saying that to each other, that we can be allies for this one issue. We don't have to be allies for everything. Just because we go to bed one time doesn't mean I'm going to have a relationship with you later. And I think that's the problem. We need to have that kind of relationship. We need to have this one night stand, so to speak, where, okay, we fight for this one issue. We're moving on. That's it. We won. We don't have to work again together. And I think the left feels, we need to be like this intrinsic relationship for life. If not, then we can't work together. And it's weird. It's very odd.
I think in that vein, let's be real here. Bernie's first run brought a lot of the left together, right? And his second run, another I don't want to say division, I want to say demographic of the left came in, younger people who kind of looked at him before, but, oh, wow, I'm going to come over here and look at him again, right? So I want to make sure that we don't lose sight of the fact that that's pretty recent in a political landscape, okay? So I think we really have to start to remember that we very recently cut our teeth on organizing, politics. What's the platform that I agree in? What are the proverbial me, okay? What are my flagship issues that put me in a situation where I think that, or I believe that I am lining up with the left, okay? And if owning a gun, is building off of your example, doesn't fit into my credible leftists, if you're a leftist and you're a gun owner, you don't fit in for me. Guys, division is a ruling tactic, okay? We have been divided for so long. And what I'm going to say is that let's remember, nobody wants to take everybody's guns away. Nobody that I know anyway, okay? I don't know those people. I do know that we do not want to continue the way that we are.
Right.
A lot of people do not want AK-47s and semi-automatic weapons on the streets, right? A lot of people don't like open carry.
Right.
That's all right.
Right.
That's okay. If you would sit down and, if you are no guns, ever, no way. Let me tell you something. They don't have them over in Britain, right? I love going to Europe. It's a different world. I've been in Britain. It's beautiful. It's very, very different from the dynamic. What? Yeah. So you still have to meet people where they are. And if you talk to people about why they feel the way that they do, then they're no longer the boogeyman for you. That's what I have found out, right? They will talk to you. They will tell you what their feeling is. And the more people you talk to, instead of out online where everybody's tearing apart each other because the left came together over a political campaign, and that's what a political campaign is, right? But if you get out into your community and you talk to people about it, all of a sudden you start to realize that there are people that I've known for years. And oh my gosh, really? You have guns? That might be surprising, okay? But they're people that you've hung out with for years on weekends. Your kids went to school together. You know what they do for a living. They're doctors, they're this, they're that, whatever, right? People are who people are. We've torn each other apart unnecessarily because you don't walk in other people's shoes, okay? And we can all point to the fringe and make all these examples and, these people are bad, these people are bad. But the truth of the matter is that the vast majority of people that live around you are your community. And again, if you get in your community and you start taking care of one another, then you can't help but start understanding each other better. Right. So I don't know. I mean, it's hard because a lot of people interact out on Twitter. And again, it's very easy to cancel somebody out on Twitter. It's very easy to beat up on them and gang up on them. But that's not going to happen if you're out trying to distribute food at a food bank or trying to get people the services they need, and you've got a group together that are helping make that happen. Yeah. All that kind of falls away, and the real world around you steps into play. Social media politics is different. It's not, I kind of hear when people say Twitter's not real life. Depends on how you incorporate it into your life, right? But it is, because none of this activism would have come together. And activism happens on the ground, right? So there's gray, guys. It's not all black and white is what I'm trying to say. It's just not. There's a
small microcosm into the activism. I know a lot of people, they kind of thought that, the March Medicare for All, we only coexist on Twitter. But, we would definitely, we wouldn't have got into the door if it wasn't for Twitter, but we definitely meet on other platforms and we definitely meet in person. So, you do need both. You do need to engage with folks. Look, I would never met Laura if I wasn't for Twitter. But then also too, Laura is a dedicated advocate and organizer. So, she works offline all the time, more than I do. So it was easy for me just to learn from her, prior to, after being on Twitter with her and engaging with her. And then, obviously her going through her vetting process, seeing this guy's really serious, and then speaking to him on the phone, having doing Zoom and emailing each other. But that's the role of an activist. That's what you have to do.
And for those who just joined us, Laura Fielding is who he's talking about, the founder. There she is.
There's Laura.
I don't have my red beret on. I have my March for Medicare for All t-shirt though. There's my red beret. Hi.
Hi. Yeah. So yeah, do you guys have two chairs? Can you both hop on now?
Right. She bombed me.
I'll grab.
Oh, okay.
I love
that'd be great if we
how
could have
cool
all of you.
I didn't know you were still on this interview and I'd get a chance to come on and say hello. How exciting.
Yeah, it's been fascinating. Really, really great points made. But I'm glad you're able to hop on because the audience,
This is amazing.
This is great. This is great. Well, so you guys have made some excellent points, and I feel really inspired by that too, and reassured.
That is the point.
Yes.
One of the things. So this next piece is not inspiring, but we know that so if we are leftists, and which we are, and we have this common goal of Medicare for all, and you are, let's imagine being like this corporatist Democrat, like a politician beholden to money, or a lobbyist, or a health insurance exec. So if you see this movement growing, if you see a Bernie Sanders who's helped spark this fire and move the Overton window on Medicare for all, if you see this 56 marches across the country being organized, and you're one of these corporatists or a lobbyist or a healthcare exec or whatever, what are you going to do about it? You're going to try to crush it, right? You're going to try to be sneaky, use your power, use your money to crush it. And historically, we know that in leftist movements in particular, civil rights movements as well, going back in history, infiltration is a real thing. It's a real scary, scary thing. And just recently, it was discovered that a so-called progressive organization based out of Dallas was actually set up by a GOP PR firm to infiltrate and trick leftists. So I'm curious to know, if you guys, being so active in Medicare for All activism, if you've experienced any infiltration or suspected any, because I get really worried, and part of a lot of that there is so much division going on that some of it might be purposeful. I can't journalistically say that. I can point to the Dallas example, I can point to history, but I'm curious of your thoughts.
I actually think that that's how you know if you're doing a good job as an activist and organizer, in a weird way. Like, if you're doing a good job, if the establishment comes after you, oh, well, there's my litmus test. I'm effective. I should keep doing what I'm doing. Amp it up. We actually had something like that in the March for Medicare for All. We was catfish, to say the least. Recently, because we're open, non-hierarchical kind of group, and someone came in and put like a photo of a known Nazi, and pretend that it was we didn't even have an event, and I think it was in Indiana. I forgot where the location was, and someone said, yeah, it was this is the location, this is the person who's going to be the keynote speaker. The person, forgot the person's name, came out, who is a Nazi, said that he had no relationship with us, which was clear to us. So, we was in the clear. But because we're an open group and we just take volunteers, we're just volunteers. We was catfishing, and then that was very triggering for a lot of folks, because people said, well, March for Medicare for All is platforming this person, and they didn't do their due diligence and then vet this person. They changed the person's name too. It wasn't their correct name. They kind of worded it differently, just so they know. So we couldn't even research that person in the first place because we didn't know who that person was. And we're doing better now as far as like a vetting system and going through the process of like, well, if someone wants to do an action, if someone wants to do a march, let's clear this with so-and-so first. Have I spoke to this person yet? Who's on this? So the establishment is always going to try different things. I welcome it in a weird way, because I need to know how good I'm doing. So if I'm not being tricked or try to be tricked, I assume that I'm not. I assume that my oppressor is not upset with me. I need to apply more pressure and to make him more annoyed so he can do what he just did, do something weird like that. But maybe Laura and Lisa have different opinions about that.
I think that all you can do is the best that you can do. And when it happens, you can't freak out and panic. You got to take a step back and figure out as best you can. Okay, this is here. This has happened. What do we know? What don't we know? And how do we deal with it? But, I see more top-down infiltration when it comes to activist groups and organizational groups, where you've got great ideas, lots of people out in the field, lots of dedicated, hardworking people, but something on top happens and and now it's no good, and you can't use it, and you can't be associated with it, and you could have 100,000 people underneath that organization busting their hump. And yeah, everything's got its issues. Come on, we all go to work every day. Please, somebody tell me that you haven't worked at someplace where somebody makes a stupid decision in management and everything goes to hell in a handbasket. Morale goes to shit. We all know that happens.
That even happened to people. That even happened to people who run for office. That actually happened. I think that happened to Bernie. Actually, someone actually did something to him, and tricked one of his staffers and infiltrated his group and put something out that wasn't real, that didn't really happen. So these things happen all the time. You just have to just know your people. You have to know who you're associated with. We was very diligent about putting out a press release and told people that this is not us, and and that's what you have to do. You have to be open and honest with people, let people know this has happened. Don't try to like go around there and say, no, we didn't know any better. Like, this happened. We was tricked. We didn't know any better. And, just be honest about it.
Own it.
Yeah. Own it.
Can I, do I have permission to break the rules just a little bit?
There are no rules. No.
Okay. Because I've just left work, and I just, I just wanted to if it's okay to kind of say a couple things that unless they've covered some of the things that we're going to be doing this weekend, because we have.
No, we haven't.
And because I know that wasn't really the topic, but
we're definitely going to. I mean, you're welcome to. I'd rather do it in a little bit, but
sure. Yeah. If that's, okay. Yeah. All I want to say is that the political revolution, or knit the revolution, or the Kenny Ballantyne thread, kind of just like the magic arrives. And so we'll get back to it, but I just want to preface something by saying, if the doorbell rings, I'll be getting up and going and giving someone that's going to be joining us as a Red Beret. She asked me about it. I told her she's going to come down and be part of it, because when I told her our event is called Healthcare for Hilltop, anyway, we'll talk about that in a minute, but I'm going to give her a Red Beret because she's going to go do a live stream and get all of her friends and family and community. And she's going to put on the beret and explain to them exactly what it means. So, all right. So I'm going to sit on the outside and so that if I have to get up and answer the door.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course.
I'm going to step away for a minute, and then I'll be back. Okay.
Sure. Of course.
Okay.
It's just me and Jen.
Yeah. Yeah. We're totally flexible. Let's talk about how you keep your head up. I'm someone who I have a low tolerance for drama and for people or whatever who I feel like are taking away from, who are addicted to the drama almost. Like they'd rather whine or point fingers or whatever and kind of distract from Medicare for All. And I know that you guys have had to deal with a lot of drama, a lot of as all growing organizations do, it happens. But how do you keep your head up? Because here you are, you're fighting against the establishment, you're fighting against corporatism, you're fighting against the duopoly, and on and on. But you also are dealing with drama. We've already talked about like the internet world. Right. But how do you keep your head up and keep going and keep focused?
Full disclosure, I think about quitting every single day. I'm not even joking. Every day I think about, why am I still doing this? Because there's so much drama all the time. So Jen, when you mentioned that, I was like, oh my God. I was like, I literally think about it every day. Today's the day I'm quitting. Laura, I'm throwing my hat in. I don't know how you did it for so long. I'm not doing it. I'm not.
The hilarious thing about that is, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was like, yeah. And the best thing for me, I have to talk to my teammates and kind of see why this happened. How did we get here? Why there's a break in communication? I think I'm probably one of the best people on my team to be a little bit more temper-headed. Mm-hmm. So I tend to I'll go out and have a smoke, maybe drink a beer or something, mm-hmm. and talk to someone on the phone and like, okay, how did we get here? Why are we here? What can we do to solve this issue? Mm-hmm. Before things blow up to be bigger than what it is.
Yeah.
And usually I'll talk to like Laura, I'll talk to someone else in team named Gene. I'll talk to a few other folks who's older, who's been at doing activism longer than, older than me. I'm 38. So I have to speak to the older elders and ask them, like, what do you do in this situation? How do I get around this? What should I be saying? Did I do something wrong? And, what am I missing? Because I'm still new to all the, I guess, cultural understandings on the left.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many things that I just stepped into. So I tend to ask, okay, what is this? I'm new to this, so I don't understand like why these things are problems. Like it seemed like a simple solution. So once I talk to someone, kind of rein it in, sometimes those things can be solved, and sometimes those things can't. You have to break ties with certain people, unfortunately. But it does start down to just being, I think, just listening to your folks and just having a good ear for people. And I think something I even talked to Laura, like one of the things we need to do is hear people and listen to people and let them vent their frustration. Laura will tell you she vents a lot to me, and she definitely gives me her ear, and I listen to her. She apologizes, for like being like, sometimes she'll, because she gets frustrated, and that's like completely understandable. I totally get it. You have every right to be angry. I'm not mad at you for like venting your frustration. I know you're not yelling at me, but I think that it's key. I don't think if she had someone to talk to, I don't think if I had someone to talk to, and it goes back to what we were talking about earlier with that gentleman who went to DC in his car with his wife. Granted, his situation is a little more serious because, he has a dire need for healthcare at this moment. So yes, he does need to talk to, but at the same time, he also has medical needs that need to be addressed. Us, we don't have more or less, we don't have medical needs that there's dire need for address at this present moment. But I do have folks to talk to on the left if I have an issue, and sometimes people don't, and that's the problem. We don't know how to, A, we don't know how to communicate, and B, we don't have people to talk to ask for help and to redirect some of this negative energy so we can funnel it into positive energy. So that's the problem. I think as activists and organizers, we need to remove our ego and say, this is not working. And because I'm new to activism, I do that a lot because I always like second guess, is this the right decision? Am I doing this right? So because I'm not an old activist, I don't have this attitude like I'm the best. I know what I'm doing. I've done this for years. I've done all this stuff. I'm constantly asking people, okay, how do I make this better? How do I redirect this? Where do I go from here? And I think a lot of people just don't do that. They don't care to do that because they think they know more. And that's the problem.
Just this morning, I was on the phone with Joe Firestone, who's an MMT PhD. His PhD is in political science, but he got his finance experience learning policy and networking in the community. There's always somebody you can turn to who is more knowledgeable. And if you don't build those relationships, you can't grow. I mean, this is about growth. Again, I really think what we're going through right now is a cultural shift as community, as reaching out to those individuals in communities that you wouldn't reach out to and find out what's going on in your backyard. You find out that, and I promise you've got 5 or 6 different issues, and they all somehow tie into healthcare. I'm telling you, they all do, all of them. The military-industrial complex ties directly into the contaminants in the ground that are making us sick, that have these insurance companies hoarding the medical data that would tell us this stuff. It's all interrelated, all of it.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah. How about you, Laura? Any you started to say something earlier.
Yeah, what I started, multiple things. I'm still laughing at Sharif because I was having, when you asked the question, I was like thankful that Sharif went first because I was having a complete mind block. And then as soon as he said his thing, I was like, that's the reason I was having a mind block, because I feel like quitting every day too. I don't feel like quitting every day, but I do have days where I'm like, why am I still doing this? And this is only kind of the beginning, or who knows? Because again, once we reach that, there could be a tipping point, and that's always what I like to look at it as an unknown. And I think I'm sort of equal parts idealist and cynic or skeptic, and it just depends on what's around, and that's probably a great deal of people right now. But what do I do? Well, I think, well, the berets, that's what and whenever I'm really doing too much contribution to the drama and the unnecessary stuff that takes us away from coming together in whatever ways that we can, and just doing what needs to be done, and never minding about personalities, and that's all stuff, and strategies and all of that. But that is why we started crafting the berets, is because it's like, you know what, we have to be able, and I'm not saying we shouldn't have these debates and these kind of disagreements and kind of put all of the ideas at the table and keep working together. But the whole idea of the Red Berets is, let's have, typically over the last many decades, there has been a separation and kind of division, and lots of, so many separate orgs and different parties and different this and that, that I thought we just really need a symbol of solidarity. And, the idea of like knitting this fabric that, that it had this, and the joy really does come about because lately sorry, I'm not coming across very eloquent. I'm kind of tripping over myself.
No, it's great. Yeah.
It's fine. When I get really frazzled or really burned out, which I was at the point when Sharif reached out to me initially for March for Medicare for All, I was very, very burned out and frazzled. And I was thinking, how are we even going to do this ballot initiative? I don't even know how I have the energy for that. And I've like next to no hope left because of, force the vote, and just, it doesn't seem to be that there's, I had kidded myself, I think, a little bit to think that there would be this massive shift in energy as soon as Biden was in, that we would have a sort of turning of the movement to kind of face the music. I guess that's a beautiful way of saying it. And when that kind of didn't happen, at least not to the idealistic full force perspective, that I had hoped, I was just really like, what? And so it really did take Sharif, quite a few calls and Zoom calls where I was kind of half in and half out, retweeting I can do that and I can do that, but I was just like, I don't know if I have the energy. You're talking about something really monumental and really massive, but I'm glad that I did to, participate. And then even at the last minute, decide it was important to go out and meet him in DC and meet up with Lisa. And, just, it was truly incredible. And despite there being some fallout and this is the growth of the movement. We're in a heavy growth movement. This stuff is painful. It is difficult, but it is to be expected, I think. And so the berets kind of keep me together when I don't have time to knit them for as many as I want to for the March for Medicare for All. And I don't know how much that Lisa talked about it, but just, I was on with Bess, I forget Bess's last name, Millennial Splaining, she is on Twitter. But anyway, she's a crafter herself, and she had reached out and we sat down, because a lot of times Red Berets is like, we're focusing on something. We're focusing on whole Washington or the March for Medicare for All. And because that's what we're supposed to be doing. We're knitting berets for the movement. We're crocheting for care. But we don't get a great deal of time to talk about the actual craftivism. And I don't think that conversation could really happen with anyone besides a crafter. So we really sunk really down into just kind of the labor of it, and how people the crafters just of themselves can't kind of make what their time is worth. And I was able to convey, hey, if any crafters are listening to this, please, the reason I didn't want to incorporate or do any of that with Red Berets, it's just an idea, is because I want people to feel that they can apply this in their own communities. If you want to get a knitting circle and you want to do a knit-in or a protest and have we demand Medicare for all sign and go outside of your representative's office or wherever, whatever, would suit you, do that. If you want to have your own Etsy page and just put, I crochet these in solidarity for, we demand Medicare for all. And that's money that you make as a craftivist, but you're spreading that messaging out on your Etsy page. And then also on Twitter, at me, and I'll share it.
Yeah, we'll help boost.
We'll help boost.
That's what this is about.
And I would love for more crafters to come along, because people have really, probably for good reason, got the idea that we're only crocheting and knitting whole Washington for the state effort. That's never been the case, but it has been that whole Washington gave us our kind of home so that people could actually feel that they were helping fund a legislative effort. But if we have enough crafters to support us, I would love to put these available on the marchformedicareforall.org. And people can support, we can raise money for grassroots candidates if people still want to go that route. I just want to be clear, they're for national improved Medicare for all. They're not for a public option. But again, it's a free idea. So really, honestly, I'm not here. I can't tell crafters what are we crafting for, And go ahead.
No, I wanted to touch on for those folks on Jen who just tuning in maybe on Status Quo, because you mentioned earlier about if people want to get into activism, what should they be doing? And Laura touched on the point that you can just go out there and pretty much do that. Any form of a lot of people don't understand that to be an organizer and be an activist, there's no school, there's no rule book for this. You know what I mean? A lot of people think that real activism come from going to some training and some boot camps, and it's not that. It's you have an issue that you're really passionate about, and you're letting your voice be heard. You want to take you want to take an active role in your community and draw attention to an issue that you find to be a problem, and just do that. And Yuling, this activist and organizer from the campaign of New York Halifax, she told me, she said, you got the first rule for activism done correctly. She says, be very naggy. So I was very naggy tomorrow, getting her to come on board. So she said, "You got the first part right. You gotta be annoying. She said, that's part of the job."
That is true. We do have
it. Is we you got to be able to just believe in what you're doing, and anybody that comes around that is in disagreement with you, and you're going to get them, because that's what social media is, right? Everybody who has something to say in the moment, knee jerk or heartfelt or whatever, you're going to hear it. Get over it, right? You got to you take your heart and you put on your armor and you suit up and you find your friends and you just keep going.
Right.
Very good advice. I want to switch now and talk about the support for Medicare for all. We've hinted at this, but let's take a look at the latest poll. This is Morning Consult. Colin, if you can pop that up on the screen. So Medicare for all, as we all know by now, it does have the support of the American people. You wouldn't know it from what the politicians in office are doing, but it does. So Medicare for all, of all voters, 55% support it. Obviously, many more Democrats, or a higher percentage of Democrats support it than Republicans, but still, taking all voters together, that's 55%. And taking Democrats, that's 79%. So we know we have this massive support for Medicare for all. And of course, you can pop it off, Colin. The answers that people give really do depend on the way that the question is phrased. I always, when I'm talking about polling and stats and stuff, I always want to point out there's wiggle room for how you design the polling, et cetera.
Right.
But even so, even with that, the majority support it, and Democrats in mass support it. So our politicians, Democrats included, or even especially as a focus, are not following through with what the people want. And one of the things that they always say is, how are we going to afford it? We can't afford it. So I want to turn the discussion to MMT, which I will be right up front and say, I know the basics, but not enough to speak with any sort of authority or teaching. So how does MMT, first, if whoever takes this question first, explain what that is, if you can, to the viewers, and how does it relate to Medicare for All? How could it help? How could it help make it possible? Which is something that AOC, whatever people think of her, she has pointed publicly to MMT as a way to make Medicare for All happen. This was back in 2019, so so go ahead, whoever wants to take the question.
What's up for Lisa?
Yeah. So again, and we said this earlier, modern monetary theory is what MMT stands for. Okay. But even the MMT community will tell you that we are a fiat currency. We spend money. Okay.
Can you explain what that is, fiat currency, for me and others?
So you can have a sovereign that is on the gold standard. And if you are on the gold standard, which the US was at one point in time many years ago, all of your dollars were backed up by gold. Okay.
Right.
Which means basically that you can't spend a dollar if there isn't gold in Fort Knox to back up that dollar. Right. But that's not sustainable. Once you hit an economy that is, expanding exponentially, your population is expanding. You have the Industrial Revolution that we went through, and then you had all of the technology expansion, and then we had the service economy and all of the corporations that come into play, right? So at one point in our timeline, we converted to what we call a genuine fiat currency, which means that the dollar is worth what the federal government says it's worth. So in other words, $100, that piece of paper does not have gold in Fort Knox to cover the value of that dollar. That dollar has that value because the government, the federal government, says that is what that currency is worth. Okay. Right. So that's fiat. What that means is if the government decides that they're going to fund a federal program, okay, say it's Medicare for All, then they incorporate that into the fiscal budgetary process. We have decided that as a federal government, we're going to fund this. And then they do a transaction that is all keystroke. Okay. Nobody goes to the printing press and cranks up the money for it. They do a credit to the program itself. And then they initiate legislation that allows that program to happen. Okay. So it's a appropriation of money to cover let's say it's an appropriation of funding to cover the program that you put into place. All right. Every government program that is enacted under a funding, because there are some programs that are not only using a currency issue, they might have other sources of funding, especially from a state program. The federal government would say, we're going to appropriate this much. And then to supplement this, you are to use these funds coming from X, Y, and Z. But every program that the federal government initiates, they will transact dollars to fund that program. And then they will set up a tax liability associated with it, because if you have too much money out in
circulation,
the economy, right, you're going to end up having inflation. Inflation comes around when you don't have enough demand for the money that's out there. So what happens then? People have too much money, interest rates go up. Now, interest rates go up for other reasons too, okay? But one factor is that there's too much money out in the general population, and that will cause inflation, okay? So you can't just do whatever you want. It's one of the reasons why they are supposed to come up with a budget an agreed upon set of programs that people want and need. Now, people, us, the general population that needs basic human rights and a safety net to make sure that people are covered and aren't starving and aren't homeless, right? It's a choice as to what we decide to fund, okay? So like the military industrial complex gets their roughly $1 trillion a year. By the time you add up everything that they throw in there, that's a choice.
And without
That's
question.
all fiat funding.
Mm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what we're really talking about here is changing what it is that our legislative representatives are willing to fund.
Hmm.
Okay. You also, when you create a program, you have to have a demand. I think we can all agree that there's one hell of a pent up demand associated with healthcare and getting everyone covered. Okay. But you have to be careful about how you do it. And I think that's how all of this intricacy comes into play. If we immediately open up tomorrow, everybody having Medicare for all, you're going to hear people say you're going to flood the system because there isn't enough healthcare providers to substantiate the need that is going to come from all the people that have never gone to the doctor. And at some level, that is true. So how you write that legislation has to incorporate in expanding providers. And that takes time, right? Mm-hmm. That's why Bernie's bill, which is the one that I really got behind, was S1804. It had a 4-year phase in. Let me tell you something. There wasn't enough infrastructure to overnight enact the ACA. It took 7 years for us to hand over the reins to the insurance industry because they had to build the capacity, they had to build the workflow, they had to build the infrastructure to make that happen. It took 7 years. Nobody's pretending that this is going to happen at the drop of a hat, but it's never going to happen if you can't get the Speaker of the House to bring the bill to the floor.
Right.
Right.
Okay. That's where we are. That's the reality. MMT is not a theory. It really bothers me that it's called modern monetary theory. Okay. It's called a theory because we're trying to change the mindset of how we use that money towards, again, I said this earlier, preamble of the Constitution, support the common defense. Yeah, we're real. The pendulum's way over on that side. Support the general welfare, the well-being of the working people, the citizenry, right? Have a safety net. Send them to school. Give them paid family medical leave. Give them childcare. Build the infrastructure with mass transit. All the things that we need. Housing, federal jobs, right? We have a need for all of that. As long as you have a consumption need, so that you can tax the income that is made when you put these programs into place so that you don't overheat the economy too much, right? But it is a tricky game and nobody has all the answers. But if we don't try, if we don't move towards that, they know this. That's why there was a 7-year phase in on the ACA. It had everything to do with all the naysayers who say, oh, you're going to overheat the economy. Oh, you're going to crash the medical system, blah, 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 blah. They're not that dumb, guys. That's why they can do it with everything else that we're funding. That's why we've got a $1.5 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill that's really going just to be another giveaway to corporations because they're all for doing that.
Right.
Okay. We as a federal government decide what it is that we're going to fund. And they know how to do it. That's why they're there.
Right. They
just don't want to, is where we're at. Mm-hmm. And Joe Friedman, Sabby Sabs from Fred Hampton Leftists last week interviewed, I want to say Dr. Sanders, but I honestly can tell you, I'm not sure that that's the appropriate. I don't know if he's a PhD. I'm sorry. And I don't even remember his first name, but you can find it. She interviewed him. He's an MMT expert. And he was talking about this. He said, as soon as the general population realizes that there's plenty of money to go around, we just choose not to fund the programs that people need, you're going to have an all-out revolt on your hands.
Hmm.
Right.
Okay.
That is a really, really helpful and thorough explanation. I appreciate that. I want to know a lot more because I think, I think if people knew, then that would make a huge, huge difference.
This how you're going to pay for it is silly and nothing in federal tax dollars.
And that's why we don't. Right, and that's why people always ask, like, I've had people say, if we have such a majority for Medicare for all, why hasn't it got passed yet? And that's just because people just don't know any better.
Mm-hmm.
Really, it's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. It's just as simple as that. It's nothing complicated for people to understand. If you realize that people just don't know, think about the average person who go out their day. They go to work, they take care of their kids, they're paying their bills. They maybe watch the news, maybe they take a break. They have a time off. They're not thinking about the shit. We're thinking about it because we're very passionate about this, but no one's taking the time or care to take the time.
They don't have it. They don't have the time.
Right, they don't. You have to make the time. So this is why we don't have it. It's because people don't know any better and they focus on the day-to-day of everyday living. So this is why.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah, I'm fascinated by that. I think, when a lot of leftists, including myself, when it's said, how are you going to pay for it? Well, we always point to, look at the military, look at how much we give to the Pentagon, et cetera. But when you put it in context of MMT, it's even more impactful and powerful. Like, clearly we could. So I really appreciate that that explanation for sure. Not to totally switch topics, but I do want to emphasize, and I saw this in the chat too, talking about, something can't just be one day. That's the point. It's not just one day. It wasn't just one day of marches. So if you guys can talk about, and Colin, if you can put on the screen at the same time the petition and the demands. If you guys can talk about the petition that you had set up and the demands, and then get into the UN piece.
Yeah. So the petition, we have 3 lists of demands. The first one is, if you scroll down there, is to, number 1, is to pass and improve and expand it Medicare for all immediately. And all the members of our team and our coalition, we all send each other emails, phone calls, text messages, what should be in there, what should be included. So we literally put down 0 copay, 0 deduction. We have a laundry list of different things. The second thing we put in there is that we want our federal government to recognize healthcare as a human right, which I think is pretty simple. And the third is prioritize healthcare in the federal budget. So we have the federal government have their spending. We want healthcare to be number one. Number one thing they focus on would be that. And we also wrote down all the language that we want that are there. So it's including, making sure we have enough hospitals, making sure we can fund doctors, make sure people can go to school to actually become a doctor and be a nurse. All that really includes that. So Lisa talked about the infrastructure. We know we don't have the infrastructure. We know that it's not going to take tomorrow and we're going to have enough doctors or have enough hospitals. We understand that. It's going to take time. But again, as she said, if we can't get it on the House floor, it's going to take even longer to get there. So again, we're not asking for, a magic wand here. We're just asking to at least pass it. And then we can talk about the nuance of where do we go from there? How many hospitals do we need? How many doctors do we need? We can break that down and we can have a discussion about that, but we still need it to pass first before we even begin to even have that discussion. We can't even have that discussion if we can't even get a vote for it. So it doesn't really make any sense either way. So we didn't hear a response back. So now we're going to take our demands to the UN and let them know that this healthcare is a human right. The United States government does not recognize this. I do have some ideas about how to move forward, after our complaint is filed, we're going to talk about more demonstrations and some further actions to help amplify not only this action, but also put noise on the fact that the United States government refuses to recognize healthcare as a human right. So I do want to reach out to folks internationally and let them know that, this is a problem here in this country, And so I think that having more allies, not just here, but also foreign as well, would be really important for the movement.
Yeah, the NHS is under attack, you guys. They're trying to privatize it just like they do here. And what they're doing right now is starving it so that they can fire sale it off. And if you have any understanding of what kind of pressure we could get if we teamed up with everybody over there that's terrified of losing their NHS safety net, push them. Go, on Twitter, there's at NHS, a bunch of stuff's going to come up.
A lot of
We
times,
need synergy.
yeah, we do. And a lot of times on the Red Berets, we'll peek over and see, because we have some people that we follow and that have been following us. Sometimes I'll just do hashtag save the NHS, hashtag Medicare for all. That's just a good thing, because we want to show solid. Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No.
We do want to show solidarity, but some of the folks from the NHS, I don't know. I'll just say the cheerleading squad over there, because they support the NHS on an organized level. They were pushing the march for us.
Yes.
They wanted to help us, and that's what works, you guys. It's not just your people in your community. It's people over in Europe have this. They watch us talk about how ridiculous it is to walk into an emergency room and be turned away because you don't have insurance, even though that's illegal. It still happens, right? And they watch that stuff and they're like, this is crazy. What's a deductible?
And that's the point I'm making too, because a lot of people outside of America, because American conceptualism, they don't believe, or maybe they don't know, that Americans can't afford healthcare. So when I'm talking about reaching out to folks internationally, I'm really talking about letting those folks see how bad it is here, so we can get more of a noise prices. Because again, it's about having a pressure campaign. None of this is saying that, this is going to solve the problem. We need more eyeballs on this. We need more people to pay attention to this issue, so that eventually we can apply more pressure and to actually get Medicare for all here in this country. That's what it's about. It's about letting those folks know, so we can have allies there as well. Because as NHS, they're also going to that problem as well. So there's some crossover. We can help each other out. I spread your message, you spread my message. We definitely need this global solidarity.
So that they can't cut out the presidential candidate and kill the movement.
And can I just say the international community. And then that also goes for us here as well. The reason it's important to have that is because we are building communities. So if we're out here doing local actions, it doesn't need to be the focus, and the goal is national improved Medicare for all. The problem when we continue to do the strategy that's been done for decades in this country, and that's to silo and separate and label, you're a state organizer, you're a national organizer. The issue is that's what we've done for decades now. That has not been effective. And it's also false and completely unfair to those, because I would argue it's the people that are working on a both and solidarity approach, like always pushing for national and working on local efforts. We're the very people who are getting out into our communities and building, growing the base. We cannot afford to alienate or to separate out and say, we don't need you because it looks like you're just caring about, no, we're building community. We need to build international community, and we need to actually care. What is Massachusetts doing over there? That's cool. I see that Boston is doing an entire, what's Massachusetts? They're putting pressure on like 3 holdouts or something. Let me go ahead and give that, it doesn't take much for solidarity, for a retweet. Everything that contributes to building the pressure and the locking arm in arm campaign towards healthcare justice, in my mind, that's what we need. You know, a couple of years back when Lisa first started kind of interacting with me on Twitter, she said, let's craft the fabric of our future, you know, and I just quote her on that a lot, because that is what we're doing. We're trying to create an interconnected fabric. And it doesn't mean that we agree all the time on the strategy, but it does mean, come on, man, we can't throw each other under the bus. We can't continue to say, no, you belong over there. Well, what you're doing over there is what you're doing over there. No, what we're doing over here is the same thing that people over in another community are doing. We're desperate. We understand that everybody across the United States is desperate, and we're all fighting on all fronts for this. At least we need to be. So I would just say, you know, it was a Zoom call, or it was something that I was in, you know, not too long back, where I cited, I just wanted to make this point. So I looked up, when was John Conyers' single payer bill first introduced? No, I'm not good with remembering these dates, but when was John Conyers' bill first introduced? What is the founding year of National Nurses United? What year was Physicians for a National Health Plan founded? Well, decades and decades ago. So if this idea that we're going to continue to separate out and label organizers when we're in fact all organizers for healthcare justice, if that worked, why don't we? We'd be there, or we'd be a hell of a lot closer. So
sure,
it is a sort of tricky thing where we still get to engage in strategy discussion, but there's some kind of a line that can very easily get crossed that goes into, couldn't you just be out organizing your own way? We really can't afford to throw any good efforts where people are gathering signatures, all of the signatures, despite the news that whole Washington, that we made the decision to suspend 1362. We still brought people into the Medicare for All database. Why? Mm-hmm. Because we're not only doing state stuff. We've done protests outside. We've done 11 barnstorms one year to put pressure alongside National Nurses United, to put pressure for Representative Jayapal's then 1384. And then recently with Kenny Ballantyne's documentary, we were outside of Representative Kilmer's office here in my district, demanding that he co-sponsor Representative Jayapal's 1976. So everybody that signed that, see, we learned from our initiative in 2018, we didn't put an opt-in for people to have a choice, opt in for email or text. We did this time. So even though we didn't get, you know, we've suspended the campaign, we still can bring all those people in. And that means they get notified of all of our actions. If whole Washington wants to send out texts or a mass email saying, have you signed the petition, the UN petition, we can do that. And now all of these people that we just reached out to in the community, and thank you, you dear, amazing volunteers, many of whom are gutted because they didn't want to stop. But you went out and gathered, and we got those people in. They're in our community now. And it's not just a local community. It is a national, it is an international community, because we truly, truly care. Both Red Berets and whole Washington care very much about opening the floodgates, building up the pressure, bringing people into a community, letting them know all about these things, not just what we're doing locally, but yes, you can sign that UN petition. And that's my...
Yeah. Well, for some more background for folks, I'll have you talk more about whole Washington, and we'll pop it on the screen in a second. But there's a kind of a debate, or like a difference of opinion with organizers, I think that people probably aren't aware of, because I wasn't. That there's organizing for national, like Medicare for All on a national level, and then also activists in states are organizing for their state, which to me sounds great. Let's do it all. Let's try everywhere. But others, I guess, have the opinion, no, we only should fight for Medicare for All on a national level because that's Medicare for some and not all. which I think is a kind of a disingenuous point. That's just my opinion. But if you can talk more about that, first of all, the difference between kind of state organizing and national organizing, and a little bit about, what your thoughts are.
Well, I can tell you why people have that belief, because the argument is that if let's say in New York, if New York passes it here and it works, it obfuscates any responsibility from the federal government to pass it federally. So the argument is, well, New York did it. Okay, well, let the states solve that problem. And it removes any responsibility. They don't have to do it. And so that's number one, that the federal government doesn't have to get engaged. Number two, why people believe this is because that the first thing that's going to get cut if the states actually fund healthcare, they're going to cut other social programs. So this is the argument I hear, that, poor and black and brown people are going to lose their food stamps. They're going to lose other social safety nets that they actually have, and they're not going to be able to survive, so to speak, because the state is funding, healthcare, which is so expensive, to actually have a substantial amount of healthcare for everybody. And the third thing is that what I hear is that certain states, let's say Kentucky or West Virginia, they don't have the buying power like New York has. So they'll never be able to afford to have a state solution. So what it does, what people argue, national people argue, number one, it removes responsibility of the federal government. The states who do afford it, they're going to screw over black and brown people. And number three, states like Kentucky or whatever who don't have that kind of money, they're going to be cut out, and the other American people won't fight for them. So, for example, I live in New York. I'll never fight for those states who can't afford healthcare, because I have my healthcare. My state's paying for it. I'm going to say screw Kentucky or screw Arkansas or whatever. So that's the argument that most people who fight for national believe. Whether they're right or wrong, that's what they believe. I tend to not agree with them because, number one, my state, every state, in my opinion, and I've always been, I grew up poor. I live in a poor, I used to live I just moved from Jackson Heights to Astoria, actually, even though AOC is still my district. She's still my district leader. I live in a pretty decent neighborhood now, but they always cut funding for black and brown people anyway. So whether or not we get healthcare statewide or not, that's something that's always, for me, that's always going to be something that's always going to be an issue. So I think that people who use that argument, I don't think is a fair argument. That's always been the case. So, and to the larger point about the federal government obfuscating responsibility, they do that now. I don't see any argument that would make sense, because the federal government does it anyway. They always try to push off responsibility. When's the last time you had any politician or your federal government do anything that's the best interest for the American people? I'd like someone to give me an answer for that. So I just don't believe that. So again, it goes back to my argument about applying pressure. I think that when we make comments like that, I think we have to have evidence for that. I think these are all opinions. I think we actually going to raise an argument about something, we need to provide substantial amount of evidence to link those two together. If someone brings some proof to say this would be a better strategy or this is a better strategy, I'll be all listen to it. But I've never heard anything from anyone who's strictly national to make anything that makes sense to me. Yeah.
So it all comes down to what's your level of knowledge around the subject and who's talking to you with what persuasive points they want to make, because it is very easy to put together some talking points like that. And if you are not savvy, and we're talking about really complex stuff here, guys, but we already had the discussion around whether or not the federal government has the capacity to spend in this manner. And we all have agreed, right? Unequivocally that they do. Yeah. Okay. So that's number one. Number two, There have been bills in the past that were written for state legislative initiatives for universal coverage in a state, okay, that were not put together very well, okay? But this is the beauty of activists getting together and talking. There have been a couple of initiatives that I'm personally aware of and involved in, where we've gathered together those activists who are writing legislation for their states, who are doing the lessons learned of the other states who maybe this is their fourth or fifth piece of legislation, because every time they introduced a piece of legislation and done a fiduciary analysis around it, they found out, oh, there's a loophole here that somebody could come in and drive a truck through and we're going to be screwed. Well, now we know about that. So learn from our mistakes. Don't make this one. Okay. Now, sure, there are going to be failures if you try and do this across the entire country for multiple reasons. The biggest one is that more than half of the states are going to have legislatures that aren't even going to entertain it. They're going to 86 it, and it's never going to come to light, okay? But here's the one piece of the puzzle that people are missing about state-based. Once you get a couple of states to prove that this saves a ton of money, that it actually, in Washington state, the current legislation is going to have a $12 billion surplus because Gerald Friedman, who's a very famous economist, did the analysis and wholeheartedly endorses this funding for that legislation. Now, Washington state, like all states, has its own set of circumstances. People there do not have personal income tax, right? But they will appropriate federal funding to help subsidize covering Medicare for all. Federal funding that has been appropriated for other disparate healthcare initiatives, which we all know right now because we've talked about it ad nauseum. Some of it has to do with funding the insurance industry that's vertically integrated healthcare. Okay. Another thing we have to get our arms over is when you are paying your copays, your premiums, your maximum out of pockets, all of that crap, right? People don't think of it as a tax. But for all intents and purposes, that is exactly what it is.
Right.
Okay. And there was a Supreme Court ruling that said that you couldn't pose a penalty on people for not having healthcare coverage because technically it's a tax and blah, 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 blah. So we know, we've learned all this stuff, okay? If you're not in the weeds on this, and vast majority of people are not, it's really easy to come to the table with a bunch of talking points that say this isn't going to work and this is what's going to do and you're going to hurt black and brown people and la, 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 la. I get it. I do. That's all the more reason why you've got to get out and talk about this stuff and network with people and reach out to people and explain how this works. I will tell you this, if Washington state were to pass single payer, you watch. All these doctors, they can't practice medicine anymore because they're bound by these damn insurance protocols. And if they want to actually treat somebody, they've got to go through days and weeks of appeals to be able to do a plan of care with that patient because the insurance company doesn't want to cover it. They're going to want to go to Washington state. I'm going to tell you why, because it's a beautiful place to live. It's killer out here. It's gorgeous. And they're going to be able to practice medicine again. They're going to have rights to the hospitals that they need to get into. And they can float around and be the experts that they are, unbound by signing over their billing numbers and Medicare certification to the insurance industry, because let's not forget, you cannot practice medicine and bill for it without a doctor's signature. Okay. And that's what the ACA did. It allowed them to contract with those doctors. So all of that, right? We need a couple of states to go and prove that this is going to save money and cover people.
All right. I want to say something, please.
Yeah, of course.
That was awesome, Lisa. I want to read a quote by Stephanie Kelton. And she says, "How will we pay for it is the wrong question. We should be asking, are these things worth doing? And do we have the real resources, the people, the raw materials, the equipment, the technology to do them? Will they make society better off?" That's obviously from the deficit myth. It is really important to continue to talk and continue to educate about how will this be funded. What's missing when we break apart this, when we look at it only through an economic lens as opposed to a movement building lens, this is entirely the problem. Because, I just think I've lost my... I just lost my train of thought. I mean, look what just happened today, that she actually texted saying she's going to rest and come over in just a little bit. When we have something local and exciting, in addition to national stuff that we're working on, we can tell somebody in our community that we just met and just resonated with. And suddenly this person is going to come by and get a red beret and go and do a live stream and tell her friends and family, hey, there's some, a documentarian and some activists that have come in from across the country to show solidarity. Come on down. This is healthcare for Hilltop. And she was telling me all about how, what she's like, there's going to be a lot of people. There always is every single year. They come out for Hilltop. So on one hand, listening to all that, it's heartbreaking because it's like, we don't have we're not doing the initiative. But at the same time, what we're going to do instead is we are going to talk about whole Washington, yes, but we're going to actually let Sharif take the lead, and we're going to talk all about the UN initiative. We're going to tell people we're fighting locally for you. Here's how you can get involved locally. And here is what the National March for Medicare for All is doing. Please get your friends and family members to sign this UN petition. And this is the power of local organizing, because that's that energy and spark that is that's involved in something that we're doing right now. And yes, we're demanding Medicare for all right now, but something that we're actually working on that we could pass, or we have a little bit more control. We can take direct actions in our own community. We can get out and talk to people. We have a lot more control and power that we can exercise just talking with friends and new people than we've met, than I can go and try to affect Nancy Pelosi or even some of our progressives, AOC. I'm not saying we shouldn't continue to try to pressure them, because I'm a kind of fight on all fronts. That's what I think that we need to do. And the last piece that I'll say is back to electoralism, which, some people again are like, I'm not doing that, or at least I'm not going to invest much or all of my energy in that. And that's completely valid. We're definitely at ballot initiative, general strike, direct action time, right? I'm somebody who's like, if I've got a great candidate like Jason Call, who's out organizing, with us, he's walking the walk, then I do very, very much support his campaign. And Rebecca Parson, obviously, shout out, because she's here in my district. But the point for the state level stuff is, we now have Chair Annette Cleveland, who refused and blocked us from even receiving a public hearing on our bill, even though it had 7 Senate co-sponsors, double what it had in the previous iteration. And why? The balance is there's 6 Democrats and 5 Republicans, and the chair is a Democrat, and that's Annette Cleveland. Well, collectively, and Jason Call did this legwork for us, they've collected more than $1 million from insurance and pharmaceutical lobby. That healthcare board, the Senate, not the Senate, the Senate Healthcare Committee.
The State Senate Healthcare
Yes, the State Senate Healthcare Committee. So what that does is, now that we're not doing the ballot initiative, and Kenny's like, maybe he'll go to this UN action. He's going to be kind of seeing what are we doing now? What's this going to shift? But one of the things that we're definitely going to do is be protesting. You can interact, or you can you can ignite this movement where people really wake up and you tell them, did you know we have a chance to pass a single payer at the state level? And do you know why we couldn't even get a hearing? People don't even know that.
They don't know
They're
that.
like, what's a state Senate healthcare committee? I didn't even know we had that. Oh, you mean why won't they do it? And you just get to talking. Well, they take money from big pharma. And then this also, it can ignite the community. We hope that one of our local volunteers and activists will rise up and challenge Chair Annette Cleveland. I'm still very much for if we can get somebody to step up and challenge these people on every level.
With enough community
voters around them,
aware of what's going on. Again,
if it's centered around an issue, then that's
activism. Yep.
Exactly. So
we educate. You go to a march, people are like, oh, what's this about? You've got that opportunity to talk to so many people.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. I want you to talk more about what Whole Washington does and this bill. Colin, if you can pull up the Whole Washington website and leave us up too. So this is Whole Washington, and I also want you to talk. You've mentioned that what your plans have changed because of COVID. So speak on that too. Tell people what Whole Washington is, what the goals are, the current actions, etc.
It was established by just a few grassroots activists who had gotten inspired by Bernie Sanders' 2016 campaign, and pretty much right around the time when the writing was on the wall that he wasn't getting the nomination. And they had also been working for an initiative 735, I think it was, to overturn Citizens United. They were successful at the state level. They were successful on that, and they thought, well, let's do a ballot initiative for healthcare, for universal healthcare. So they, set about setting up a 501c4 and, reaching out and doing the legwork and commissioning the study from Dr. Gerald Friedman. And then, that started in 2016.
Writing the legislation.
In 2000, I joined the fall of 2017, and it was just like in December that I went to my first, and it's so interesting how this worked, because it was Catherine Lewandowski, who is on the board of Whole Washington, and she's a nurse, and she had just seen my random Red Berets pictures online saying, let's knit for nurses and the 99%. This is how it all turns full circle to the March for Medicare for All, right? Because I didn't know any activists at the time. I had only known that I voted for Bernie in the primary, and I wasn't even plugged into social media or anything. I just heard about him and his platform. Well, so I just, but I did get online when Bernie didn't get it and when we got Trump. And so I just, I did go to the Women's March. I had knit some hats for that, but I'd sent some to DC. I'd knit some for Seattle. And then it was like many, many months later that I was listening to an older YouTube live rally of Roseanne DeMoro and Dr. Jane Sanders and Bernie addressing the National Nurses United. And then that's when I thought, I was remembering the aerial views of all the pink and thinking, if we just had all those sea of hats, all that sea of red, and national marches for Medicare for all across the country, oh my gosh, that would, if all that knitting was aimed at healthcare, Medicare, national improved Medicare for all, that would really do something. And so I'm getting a little bit tearful, because for me, some months back when Sharif reached out, I realized that, it was Whole Washington that really kind of gave us a home for our craftivism, and we were crafting locally. And we were also kind of on Twitter and sending things to people and to Nina and Dr. Dooley, and trying to kind of grow the movement in a really grassrootsy sort of way. So we were doing a lot with national. We did a lot of organizing for Bernie, so really put a lot into the electoral strategy. But it wasn't until Sharif reached out and talked about, we're going to do a march. Yeah, we're going to do a march. We're going to march in DC. And I, again, I was in that stage of burnout, so it kind of took a little bit of time to really settle in, like that the dream, really the dream of, I want to see this sea of national nurses red in 2 tones and multiple tones of red all across the country. That's actually what the March for Medicare, that's what the march was going to do. I'm going to get really tearful. So yeah, it is sort of gut wrenching or heartbreaking to me when, and I do understand people's concerns, and I understand, when they're legitimate, and, strategy has been a thing for a long time, and I expect it will continue. But from my point of view, to have really knit and crocheted for the movement and met nurses through this, and had nurses actually come say, I love this idea, and drive down and, hey, have you heard about Whole Washington? No, what is that? I don't know any activists. Well, I wouldn't even know the activist community that I know now. I wouldn't have got connected with the local Bernie-crats, our Revolution Washington Bernie-crat coalition, and Whole Washington, and therefore got online and gotten connected to Lisa and, everybody that I know now. That all happened because one nurse saw my hats and was like, oh, we need her for Whole Washington, So I was originally, the idea was for national, but, Catherine, who is very much for national improvement. She's been a nurse for years. And she is the type, like I think many nurses, that carries the weight of this on their shoulders. And that is another thing that is absolutely heartbreaking. That is what we expect. Our nurses have to care for us and heal us. And they also have to carry the burden of knowing how many people that they could save and they can't. And they don't get to be seen. Yeah. Or they can't. It's just gut-wrenching. And when you meet, especially as a body worker, as a massage therapist and a craniosacral therapist, which is what I do by trade, I'm used to kind of reading people's bodies. And, and I also have quite a bit of training in body psychotherapy. I studied that over in England for about 7.5 years. And so, again, I don't want to, I did a 4-year thing in body psychotherapy, so I do have some training in that, even though I didn't finish my thesis. But the point is, I really do sort of can tell when somebody's carrying that weight, and and nurses do, and they're carrying our society, they're carrying our societal wounding and all of these deaths on their shoulders. And I won't say the F word, but it's seriously. It's seriously. So that's why, that's been our hashtag, has been knit for nurses and the 99% crochet for care. So with all of this kind of push and pull and people having different ideas and not trying to, honestly, I'm at a point where I don't want to dismiss. I don't want to be dismissive of people's concerns and what they think about different strategies. But for me, for the kind of way that this red thread has connected things up, and the nurses really sort of, they're at the heart of this. And I did start knitting for national. So then to be sort of characterized as Red Berets are for the states, you are the state people, is heartbreaking, and it's not fair, and it's not true.
Oh, it's wrong.
It's wrong. And so, but I am for solidarity, and I am for pushing a fight on all fronts, and I am for building community and connecting a fabric. And I'm not the only one. Lisa just gave me a crocheted beret. Fran, Sylvia's daughter, at Vote No GMO, she's all the way down in Florida. It's the nurses. The sort of nurses have heard this, and they've taught themselves to crochet. Fran now crochets, and she sends a box of berets every single month. So people, when you see these pictures out, Michelle Devier and Fran and Lori Jackson, they're the ones who are that's a lot of their work. I have knit for a lot. I've actually knit about 350, which is
wow, that's incredible.
All the proceeds that we donate go to Whole Washington, and that's where we started this. Yeah, right.
It's true. Nice. Yeah.
I want to say real quick. Sorry for Sorry for being a little distracted. There was something going on with the coalition, and people kept wanting me to chime in.
No worries. I've held you here for almost 3 hours. No worries
totally
at all.
fine. Totally fine. We could go. I can go on forever. I'm totally fine.
Yeah,
with
we could for 7 hours.
This is the viewers are just loving this conversation and saying it's so valuable. So I appreciate you guys so much.
Well, thank them. Thank all of you.
All the
Thank
viewers.
You guys are amazing.
God.
Thank you, viewers. Thank you, guys.
So you were talking about, so Sharif, you went to Washington to help with whole Washington, right? So but plans have kind of changed. So what is happening and how can people help if they're around?
Yeah,
with this specifically.
Well, the goal is to build solidarity. So the March for Medicare for All, we're for national approved Medicare for All. That doesn't mean that we don't show solidarity for different groups or different organizers who are pushing state-led issues. You know, we are working towards what does solidarity mean on the left. A lot of times there's so much division here, as we were mentioned before. So the goal is to come to this event, have a table, and talk about the march, talk about next actions. Also talk. I'm going to have a speech as well. I wrote a speech that I'm actually going to say at the actual event as well. The goal is anything else that is healthcare related. We're going to start a newsletter. So I want to plug in and talk to folks. How can I, get your contact information so we can actually share it out to our resources and we can share it out to our members, let people know what you're doing in the healthcare sphere. So the idea is to build a community, is to build relationships with folks and actually get them to understand that, just because you're in Hilltop or just because you're in Tacoma doesn't mean that what you're doing isn't important to everyone else here in the country. So that's really the focus. The focus is to help continue to build solidarity and to let people know about the petition. And if anyone has other actions, let us know about that. I want the energy to be about how do we get people on the street? Street heat is really important. How do we push our politicians? How do we get people out there to actually demand Medicare for all? We need to grow this movement bigger than what it is. We tend to sometimes feel on the left that we're bigger than what we really are. We're really small. We're not as big as I think we are. I really think that in order we need in my mind, we need 12 million people behind us for us to get Medicare for all. We really need that kind of number. We need so many people loud and vocal. Until we have that, I can't imagine us getting it. We really need that. And so that's what me being here is all about, is just getting more allies. I'm really here to actually have people more people in our coalition. So that's my agenda.
Wonderful. That's great.
Mine's
go ahead, guys.
Mine's really short and then you go. Yeah, I want to look. I'm fortunate enough to live and then work really nearby for a really holistic chiropractor who very much supports our work, and she's okay with me wearing my March for Medicare for All shirt, my Red Berets shirt, my whole Washington. I am somebody who it's time to wear this stuff, honestly. Yeah. So it is a little bit of my fundraising plug for marchformedicareforall.org. If you don't have a bumper sticker or a car flag on your car and you don't have a t-shirt, it really is time to just put this out. And because when I go through, if I do have to go and stop to get something to eat or whatever, you'd really be surprised how many people will say, oh my God, we need that so bad. Mm-hmm. And then you get a chance to tell them, oh, guess what? We're doing a ballot initiative when we were still filling out these signatures. Or hey, guess what? If you go to the website, you can sign this petition and let's add some pressure. So being visible is really, really important. And a bumper sticker or a button is something. Yeah.
We start to ask questions. When I was in DC, it blew my mind because after the march, we all went out for drinks and food and to celebrate. And this married couple across from us came over and thanked me and said, thank you for your activism. And I was like, wow, that's very cool. Blew my mind, because I didn't, at that point, it didn't really hit in that, I'm an activist and organizer. And then, the fact that you said, thank you for your service and stuff is really it hit home, It's very hard. Very cool.
So one of the things that I don't think we touched on, but we're going to a provider. It's a provider fair, right? It's a healthcare providers.
I don't think it's just healthcare providers. I think it's a lot of
small
I think
businesses?
it's just a small businesses of the Hilltop community. I mean, but it is a healthcare fair because that's the way I've described it to you. But it's like a summer splash party. So I think
that's what's going to take actually too. So
small businesses.
I mentioned this on the other show I was on, that we need more small business. We need other organizations outside of healthcare to be engaged with this conversation. And so when I talk about having allies and growing the movement, I'm not just talking about getting other activists on the left who part of the echo chamber of like, we need Medicare for all, like other folks who are not necessarily privy to this information, or they maybe heard about it on the news or whatever, but maybe they're not activists and they're not engaged. But those small businesses in Hilltop who are doing this event, those are the folks we should be talking to. The fact that they caught the vision and say, hey, I'm coming out for this because this is an important issue. Those are the folks you want to reach out to. You definitely want them to build engagement. Maybe the owner of of that tire shop can't come to every Zoom meeting and can't be a full-on activist, but his support and him allowing you to engage with his clients or whatever the case may be is super invaluable.
Oh, that's it.
Super invaluable. Yeah.
I was a finance officer for a long time in various different places. Okay. Unless you're a heavy industry, heavy inventory company, your very first expense is your payroll. And in your payroll are your benefits. And I don't think there's a working human being alive that hasn't heard the story that they're going to pay you $10 an hour because 33% or 36% of your salary is tied up in the benefits that you get because you have the luxury of working here for $10 an hour. Even though you're a master's degree, 6 years of experience, this is the best we're going to give you and you should thank us. Small businesses, the vast majority of them, cannot afford to get health care for their employees. One of the kickers there is if you've got less than 50 employees, you don't even qualify for a group plan. Right. So the plan that you've got to go to a broker to give to your employee is going to be an astronomical expense. However, in this day and age, everybody's insurance plans are astronomical because the vast majority of us now are presented with every year you got to change your healthcare plan, is a high deductible plan, which means you're paying $1,000 a month for your family. My family was paying $1,200 a month at one point in time. We had a $12,000 deductible, $4,500 per individual, $12,000 for a family before your insurance kicked in at 80/20, for God's sake, right? Like, this is the kind of crap that the American people spend 20% of their household income, even if they don't have a major illness across their threshold, right? So what I'm getting at is businesses will save a ton of money on this, okay? They will actually be able to have more cash flow because they're not tied to these stupid brokers that are coming with, oh, hey, this year your healthcare costs are going up 25%. As a finance officer, you look at that and you're like, what am I cutting? Because I've got to provide healthcare. So where's the money coming from, right? Once again, and you decouple healthcare from your employees. You know what that means? You don't get people banging on your door that really don't want to work here. I just need to come in and get benefits for my son or daughter, right? You want people to be able to go to work where they want to go to work. Right now, if you're an employer and you find out that one of your employees is looking for a job, everybody will, it's illegal, but they do it anyway, they'll fire you.
Right.
That's our reality. Women can't leave their husbands because they don't have health care. It's a vicious, oppressive cycle. And the small businesses, when they learn, I've talked to plenty of small businesses and I tell them about these things and they're just like, You mean to tell me that this is really a possibility? Where do I sign?
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
Please make your way up and down.
Incredible.
I will. I
with Kenny
wanted to,
Valentine trailing behind you.
I want to canvass with you on Martin Luther King on Saturday, Sharif, because it is a community of.
I'll be giving massage, but you too, take it.
There's lots of faith-based organizations up there.
Mhm.
It's a great community. It's a wonderful community. It's a thriving community, but it is not an incredibly affluent community, right? Mm-hmm. But it's still a community. People come out and talk to one another. There's all kinds of younger bohemian businesses up there. There's women of color who've opened up a clothing store. Can you imagine?
That's such a cool shop.
In a pandemic, these two women successfully bought an inventory and opened their doors. And I can't wait to get back there, to be honest with you, because they got great stuff in there.
Yes, they do.
When we talked to them, they were all over it. Oh, yes, we'll take petitions here, right? So it's important to remember that just because COVID is ravaging everyone, that doesn't mean that this initiative isn't going to happen again. It just means that we have to protect our communities and our community health, because that's what we're all about to begin with, right? So what are we going to do in the interim? We're going to look at the bill again. Do we really need a $12 billion surplus annually, or are there other things that we could do to pass the savings down to the individual? They're going to relook at that. And we're going to have a little bit more time to get that ground game going, talk to the people in the community, so that we're not trying to get out the vote in the last 2 weeks of a campaign, right? You got to do it now. Now. You got to talk to everybody now. That's why we're the ground game for nationally improved Medicare for all. And somebody's got to pull the plug and show the rest of the country that this works.
Oh, and I know we're probably but what this makes me think of is, it's not only that people need to see 1 or 2 or 3 states succeed with it. It's actually, look at how depressed, look at how much energy that the marches for Medicare for All brought, but we're dealing with a seriously depressed electorate right now, and progressive activist movement. So it's just like these actions that we're doing, that they bring hope. It's hope. We have to bring hope, and we don't even need a win yet to do that. We just need to show, like some of the comments that I read, and like I say, they're really hard to read, knowing that I was part of that decision, to stop the ballot initiative process for now, is because, like comments like, great, so nobody's fighting for us now. And it's like, no, we still are, whole Washington still is, Red Berets still are, national M for all, local, your different marches, there are, and you please fight with us. So whenever we get out and we get into our community, we do some live streams and share, and Kenny Valentine shares out some of the clips and hopefully the full panel discussion that we're going to do tomorrow. So it's like he's going to do filming outside of everybody speaking to the community, and then also our healthcare strategy panel discussion. That's the kind of thing that is it brings people hope, and hopefully it inspires people to get out into their own communities, because we can't afford, truly speaking as like an activist and somebody who's been at this for a few years and yes, wants to quit some days, like, why am I still doing this? But what we just can't afford is to lose hope and to lose energy. And it has been tough with the electoral scene and the current administration. It really has. It's been very tough on actual activists to say, how do we stick with this as this platform? This still remains on our platform. It doesn't matter who's running for office and whether it's on the Biden administration's platform. It's our job to demand it every single day in every way that we can. And when people see us doing that, they'll join us.
And we need everybody. We can't alienate anybody, because We have to be the ones we've been waiting for. There's no savior that's going to swoop in and do this. We've got to come together and do it together.
Yep.
And it breaks her heart, and I know because it breaks mine hearing her say this. We are fighting for them. All of us are. Whole Washington's going to come back when we don't put our people at risk to gather signatures, and it's going to be a better fight, right? We're going to come back at it, and we're going to come back stronger and harder with people in the communities that know we're here.
Yeah, after we've talked to all of the small businesses in Hilltop, you know, so it's like it's been easy to get, you know, already, like, because Kenny's is thinking, how am I going to sort of shift gears and where I thought we were going with this documentary. But that was the thing, you know, I don't know that he's going to call it the red thread, but Lisa and I keep saying the red thread. But, you know, I think he saw yeah. But, you know, like the whole thing is just like, what, you know, how can we be this kind of connected fabric, this connected
community,
connected community. And we're resilient, you know, and we're resilient because, you know, that was quite depressing. And I went in there and sobbed, and Lisa and Sharif like just knew that I was in there sobbing for a few minutes, and I came back out. And now we've already got, like, you know, this woman that I said is coming over here, and just knowing what we're going to do tomorrow, and knowing that actually, you know, we do get to, you know, we were going to focus on March for Medicare for All petition anyway, but it definitely gives us an opportunity to let that shine, where we have the bad news of, you know, having to sort of call a halt to 1362. We still, of course, going to let them know about Whole Washington, and that we still have a bill, and that we will be moving forward. But we also get to say, you know, a lot about the March for Medicare for All and what we're doing at the national level. So we're a resilient movement. We are going to have these stumbling blocks that are really, really difficult to deal with, but
we can't give up. We don't have a choice.
We don't have a choice.
And I just wanted to say one more thing. Like, I don't know how Laura and Sharif feel about this, but if you guys have got some healthcare thing that you want to do and you think it'd be great for us to come visit, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
We'll hit the road.
Right.
Very cool. Very inspiring. I'm going to read some super chats, and then I want you guys to plug your websites and your actions and times, like give people the times for tomorrow, etc. So super chats. Let's see. VA from New York, $5 a super chat. Getting single payer in New York ignores healthcare for Flint. We got ours. Now good luck getting yours. No, because I mean, we covered that. In my opinion, no. I
hope New York
gets great. Yeah. And then we also fight for Flint too. It's not, in my opinion, like one or the other.
1881A. We got to remember that for Flint.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Mad Ocelot God 81. Time bank plus tool libraries equals do-it-yourself jobs program. Maybe speak to a local time bank or tool library on your travels. Practical, social, and productive potential. I don't know what that is. If you're still around, Mad Ocelot, email us at info@statuscoup.com. Fran, Sylvia's daughter, says thank you, Status Coup. Thank you, Fran. Lana Dell hates the clock. Thank you. Robert Kaplan, we need to get more people to join the fight for Medicare for All, as the current healthcare system is crap. Totally agree. Lana Dell hates the clock again. We have been discussing a national health program since Roosevelt. Indeed. Lana again. Minnesota also has an active state Medicare for All discussion going on. Cool. Peace Walker, the system creates desperation. Yes, I believe that was in response to the Floyd Roseberry. Lana again. Lana, you're amazing. We also need to take Pelosi out. #vacate the chair. Agreed. Faint signals from Vega. Medicare for All would save $450 billion, save 70,000 lives extra each year, according to a 2018 Yale study. And then she says, it's a sovereign economy, #LearnMMT. I am definitely enthused about digging in more to MMT myself for sure. New member, welcome, new member, the M. Suroy, welcome, welcome. Jerry says, thank you for all your hard work. Wonderful. Lana, again, you amazing, amazing woman, saying fabulous conversation. Jerry, won a yacht. I hope that's your actual last name. Won a yacht's a great blessing. Thank you, Jerry. Auntie Ann says, will whole Washington eliminate private insurance and PMB and apply to all Washington residents, even undocumented? As for MMT, applies only to federal government, not states. So I'll let one of you take that question.
That was kind of a lot in one question.
That's a ton.
It is.
Yeah.
Will whole Washington eliminate private insurance and PMB?
I don't know what PMB is.
PBM. I don't either. PBM. And apply to all Washington residents, even undocumented. So I guess, will it eliminate private insurance and will it apply to undocumented folks?
It will. That's a really good question. I don't know if there's, it will apply to undocumented. It will apply to everybody in Washington state.
But is it everybody that wants it? Like, I don't know. Does it eliminate all private insurance? I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that. George is not here. So answer off the top of my head.
I would assume that based on how the legality as of right now, the private insurance can exist. But who's going to use it?
For supplemental.
Right. So who's going to use? Yeah. That's the question. Who's going to use it if they can already they can go to the doctor without needing it? So it kind of itself. It fizzes itself out.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes sense. Andy, love you, Andy, saying we love the Red Berets. Thank you, thank you. And then Jerry again. You guys are so amazing. These great viewers. So Auntie Ann says PBM equals pharmacy benefits managers. They're a big ripoff. We don't know what that is.
Wow.
Well, yeah, I've dealt with them before, and I'm not. I don't. Georgia, we need Georgia on this.
We do need Georgia on this. What I will say is that a whole lot of the savings a whole lot of the savings of the bill is actually because of cutting out all of the administrative costs, and also, of course, that it gives us the power to negotiate the price of pharmaceuticals. So,
how about if we write these things down and we'll get Georgia.
Well, the other thing I will say too is that. And the other thing too, I'll say is that through some of these debates that happened on Twitter, and there were a lot of them, multiple threads where the questions that were answered over and over again by Georgia and by Jen and I, and they know the policy very, very well. I will say, just going to wholewashington.org, the entire initiative is there to read. The financial study by Dr. Gerald Friedman. And then also, the benefits, there's like a very extensive list of questions and answers. And I think anything that you can possibly imagine to ask about the bill is, Jen and I has done an incredible amount of work on that website. It's very easy to navigate. There were a lot of times where I felt like we linked the website, or if, answered the question directly, and I feel like stuff wasn't read. The website's there for people to use and to navigate, so wholewashington.org. And also what's cool about it is that we've got a savings calculator that people as well as small businesses can go in, put in their information and see what they would save if it were to pass. And again, there's been a new financial study that hasn't all been released yet, because basically what our current initiative is written is based on, and the numbers that are on the literature and stuff on the website are based on a 2018 study by Gerald Friedman. And now, again, that was going to save $9 billion for the state of Washington every single year. Well, now it will save like around $12 billion. And likely what's going to happen with that is we're going to take some or all of that extra surplus and make it even better for small businesses. It's already a very strong piece of legislation, but there's a couple of things.
There's always things you can do.
There's
better.
things we can improve, and so that's the upside to not finishing this year, is that we can improve it, and it is a silver lining. And in the long run, it might very well make the difference. All we need is a simple majority to pass in Washington state, but we're very well aware of what the industry is going to throw at us if they see us making the ballot.
Right.
And so we need to go forward with the very, very best piece of legislation that we have available. One of the points that we also did stress in a lot of these comments over and over again that a lot of people don't know is that Washington state has the most regressive tax system in the entire country. We have 14 billionaires that don't pay any income tax. So while I understand that we're not a monetary sovereign, we get this. And while we also understand that the very, very best way and what we need to do is pass National Improved Medicare for All. And if we could pass it tomorrow, that's what we would do. We Whole Washington volunteers are all in Medicare for All organizers, and we've said this repeatedly. The question really is, if we're going to throw direct democracy ballot initiatives overboard as being not part of the strategy we want to have, then essentially what we are embracing is a top-down or electoral strategy, right? Because we have to pass National Improved Medicare for All. We actually have a process for that. We have 1881A, but we also have Joe Biden, who said he'd veto. So we're going to need a Congress to pass this. We just can't afford to take the pressure campaigns out at the local level.
Because those are the people that elect the representation.
Yep.
That's really the crux of the matter. This is the ground game.
It's the ground game.
It is the ground game.
So anyway, I don't know if that kind of
I think that does it.
I think that does it.
Yeah, I think that answers the question.
Right. I think so too.
Colin, if you can, when I say the name of the websites, pull them up so folks can see what they look like and maybe see the URL. I don't know if that'll pop up, but show Whole Washington, please, for folks so they know how to join. So can one of you give the address, the URL for Whole Washington? How can people find it?
Oh, wholewashington.org. Is that what you?
Wonderful. Yeah, perfect.
And then, on Twitter, it's at Whole Washington. And I think on all of the platforms at Whole Washington.
Wonderful. So yeah, viewers, get your pen and paper out or open up a new tab, whatever. And then Red Beret's site.
Yep. Red Berets is Red Berets Medicare for All.com, all spelled out.
Medicare for All.
Medicare for All. Yes.
Spelled out.
That's
no
true.
4.
Yeah, no 4 spelled out. And then, another thing is I don't do my own website. So you will very soon see that we add March for Medicare for All so that will link to the petition, because that's what we want to do is we want to put every effort that Red Berets is trying to support. But again, we're not even like an org with a board. We're some knitters and crocheters and some organizers. So, and I'm not undermining anything that we've done. We're just very, very grassrootsy. So with things like website,
great people that help us.
With great people that help us.
Same.
All those graphics up there.
Great.
By Fran.
And Colin, if you can put up the March for Medicare for All petition, please.
Yeah, and we have a CQR code for that, right?
Yeah, we do.
Mm-hmm. Okay, is it on the?
I don't know if it's on the site or not, but I can certainly tweet it at you.
It's definitely on the site, and then also to Jen, I don't know if you have the URL for the actual website for March for Medicare for All. Folks can go there too. This is for the petition, but if you want to go to the website and see what other stuff that we're doing, they can do that as well.
Okay, so that's m4m4all.org.
Yeah.
So viewers, write that down, and if you're so inclined, sign the petition and join. And if you all want to give your personal social handles too, go for it.
Ladies.
I have to look mine up every time.
Red Berets M for all.
Thank you.
Okay, that's her on Twitter.
And that's the only place you can ever find me besides knitting. The three will tell you.
I love that you were knitting like right now. You're
Right.
that's great. I love that.
When I'm not tweeting. Yeah.
And I'm at 5050 lines only on Twitter.
And I'm at I am the number 4 M the number 4 all. No.
Oh,
Yeah.
Colin's got it all popped up on the screen. Very cool.
Yeah, that's
Awesome. Yeah. Any last words? We're almost at 3.5 hours. You guys are real champions. Any last words for folks, and then we'll.
That's crazy. That's crazy. I think Jen.
We had a lot to say.
You know what, Jen? I ever had, Jen.
It's great. We had fun.
I did have fun. This is great.
Oh, God. You know what, Jen? I just want to say that I can't thank you enough. And
Seriously.
I know that you haven't been feeling well, and I know what a road warrior last month was for you guys.
Thank you.
You know, like, I don't even know how you do it. So
Seriously.
when you have bad days, please,
and when you
we'll pick you up.
And when you have people on Twitter, just thank you for being awesome. Thanks for, like, I think I mentioned on that on Twitter, I said, you know, we really, just the fact that when we talk about multi-pronged approach, that's really what I observed that you all were doing, like to go from March for Medicare for All DC directly over to New York to get the action for People's Party and AOC, and then the and to cover Senator Nina Turner's. This is what we believe, and it's an all fronts. We're not throwing anything out. We need all good efforts. So I really saw that in your coverage, and thank you so much.
And then the bounce to Flint. And
then go to Flint. Right.
My heart is always in Flint for sure. Well, I admire you guys so much and everything you're doing. You give me hope in a world that can feel pretty hopeless these days, especially. But yeah, I feel inspired, and I hope the audience does too. And we'll definitely Colin, our amazing man behind the curtain here.
Thank you, Colin.
Thank you, Colin. One last little thing. Can I leave you with healthcare.movie?
Oh yeah, the movie, the documentary. Yes.
Okay, yeah. Okay, healthcare.movie.
Red thread. We're weaving it all together.
We got too many things going on.
But yeah, we do want people to see, you know, that this is a work in progress. He thinks it's, you know, possible that it's going to be January or February, but healthcare.movie, and then you can go and see, you know, some of the early clips. And he lets me know that actually he'll have a bunch more stuff that's coming out soon, and his website sort of mid-September is going to be really updated. So just everybody stay in the loop on that.
Awesome. So we're going to have clips of this or segments of this very long interview up later tomorrow, etc. So many incredible things were said. I learned a lot. I know the audience did from the comments. So thank you guys all. Everyone, follow them. Go to the websites. Check it out. Let's all keep fighting. All right. Bye, guys.
Thank you so much. Wait. Give credit to your producer, please.
Yes. Colin. Shout out to Colin. Of course.
Shout out to Colin.
Yay. Thank you, Colin.
Thank you
for putting up with us all your
Colin is truly, like, he's the nicest guy in the world. He's a great guy. We've worked together for several years.
And I love the graphic. Did he do the graphic?
Yeah.
I love the graphic because it was kind of like because it was that laughy moment. It was kind of like, Laura can make it almost, but I was still in there, right? I thought it was amazing. It made me smile. Thank you.
Just so you guys, if someone's saying they're getting an error trying to sign the petition, I don't know if it's just a browser thing or whatever, but just letting you know. All right, so audience, we love you all. Thank you for watching. Again, follow, find them, find their sites, find the actions, and take action too. If you feel moved, and I hope you do, I think many people do, what can you do in your area? Find out. It's great. So thank you guys. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys. Love y'all.